Gatorade.
Oh, okay.
Drinking Gatorade. Okay.
Zero sugar Gatorade, but.
And we're live. Everybody, how you doing?
Hey, good to be here.
Yeah, I'm doing great.
Okay, well, let's me tweet just links real quick, and then you guys kind of shoot the shit for a little bit while I get the links tweeted out.
Well, Andrew, I'll just ask you preliminary questions because I have a lot of affection for Augustine, and I know that you're an Augustinian. I'll just say that my path to reversion started with Augustine, so I really, really like him. So I want to know, how did you first encounter Augustine?
In college, actually.
Yeah, me too.
I first studied the Augustine in college. I had a whole class on church history, and it was really, really excellent. And when we got to Augustine, that was very formative for me because like my entire ideology is kind of based on Augustine, and particularly his concept of the Trinity. So So I mean, that was the point. I know that was like a dividing line for me, is like once I understood the Trinity and before and after, because after is like everything just clicked into place. I remember the moment where everything was just clicking into view, and it was just amazing. So he was extremely formative. Like there's no archotropism, there's no anti-tax, there's nothing I'm known for is there without Augustine.
Awesome.
Yeah, Augustine.
What about you?
Yes. I haven't. I've read, I think, a lot of excerpts from him because I have this. Did a philosophy course on early medieval philosophy. So we studied We studied three specific Catholic thinkers. We studied Augustine, Boethius, and Abelard. And Augustine was the first one, and he just blew me away. We also studied a few Islamic and Jewish thinkers, but the main focus of course, was on the Catholic ones. And they gave us this big book, which was just, I think it's like 1,000 pages long, which is just excerpts from all of these thinkers from, their most important works. So there's stuff on the Trinity, there's stuff from City of God, there's stuff from his dialogue on free will, which was the thing that really made me think of him as a, not only this passionate speaker, because I had first read the Confessions, but as a really great philosopher. You could say both God foreknows everything and there is free will, and explain it in a clear manner. And in the Confessions, where he explains that every vice, every misuse of something is you're misusing a good that should be rendered unto God. So I can actually give a quote that this is the quote that really blew me away, where he explains that, for example, for pride mimics loftiness when in fact you are the one God most high above all things. And he goes on through the list of like cruelty. Cruelty is meant to inspire fear, but who's to be feared except the one God? He goes through lust. What are the enticements of a lustful are meant to arouse love, but nothing is more enticing than your charity, and no love is more wholesome than the love of your capital T, truth, which surpasses all things in beauty and splendor. So he goes on through the list of all these possible sins, and he ends with, thus the soul commits fornication when it turns away from you and seeks outside you those things that it cannot find pure and unadulterated unless it returns to you.
Yeah,
That's
that
great passage.
that is excellently put. That is one of my favorites, because that's where I get the idea that that all sin is not love. Anything that's not love is sin, because God is love. And so, and you can and once you put it in that context of we're supposed to be loving our neighbors as ourselves, and any action that is sin is definitionally not love, or somehow definitionally distinct from love. As it's like it just everything clicks into place. Like, oh, now it all makes sense. And it doesn't sound, and this and sin is no longer arbitrary, which is the problem for a whole lot of other because they're not explaining it. They're not explaining the commonality between it, between what these sins all have in common. They just say like, oh, it misses the mark. And it's like, sin is an archery term. And it's like, oh, it means to miss the mark. What's the mark? I mean, it really begs the question, what's the mark? And they never explain that. And, and then it kind of leaves a lot of people thinking that the definitions of sin and like why certain acts are sin and why they're not is completely arbitrary, when it's not arbitrary at all.
It's continue.
I use a
Real
much more
quick.
precise language when when I'm talking about Augustine's thoughts, but than he does. But he's like 4th century A.D. I'm it's a lot more.
Yeah.
I'm in the scientific age, so
Yeah, exactly. But there is a certain poetry to his thought. He's a very good writer, I find, especially his letters. There's such a, I think Art of Christendom on Twitter made this point.
well, beauty
there's-
is an aspect of love.
Yeah, but there's such an earnestness to him. He feels like, when he sends a letter to his mom from university, it's so relatable. He's like so excited. He meets people, and there's this he's so honest. He's so honest and earnest in the confessions, and you can just see it bleeds from him what he's writing. He's a great writer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, quick, Andrew, I gotta say, I think the background you have is an improvement from the Don't Tread on Me flag to the St. Michael. Definitely an improvement.
I mean, I saw it in the mall a few weeks ago, and I'm like, I need that on my wall. It's like, I mean, St. Michael to pulling a Derek Chauvin on Satan. I'm like, oh my god, yes, there's nothing more based.
Yeah, that's a great painting. So let's get into this. Real quick, if you could lay out your Austro-Thomism. I know it takes a while to kind of lay it out, but let's see if you can just lay out your Austro-Thomism real quick if you can.
The basic there's 3 basic definitions. I'll give you 2. The idea of Anarchotropism is how the state forms and derives its power. And basically there's you've probably all noticed by now, particularly if you've been living in the last 2 years, that the state has a mechanism where it seeds chaos in order to power grab from it, using the promise that they're going to restore order. They never do, and if they do, it's usually a fraud, of some sort. So it's like, but they still get the power and they still keep it that way. And the second definition is basically the praxeology of how the first one works. So when I say Anarchotropism, I can either be referring to like kind of the economics of power, quote, quote, or I can be referring to that chaos power order cycle that a lot of people have talked about for a long time. I finally just gave it a name instead of calling it chaos power order. That doesn't it doesn't quite flow off the tongue. Anarchotropism does, though. And it literally means to turn towards a ruler. So it's like, this is how you orient a society. I named it that because it's the mechanism by which a society becomes a state derived order.
How long? I know you. How I put this? How long were you sitting on this before you decided coming out and talking about it on Twitter? Like, did you figure out why you were like doing podcasts on Twitter? Or did you come up with it, and then at what point did you say, okay, now I know enough. Now I'm confident enough in what I'm saying to go forward and actually talk about it with people?
No, actually, it was my first real innovation was the anti-tax. That was my first like revelation where it hit me of Lord, how can you have left us doomed to this this idiotic tax regime? How would you take this problem that seems completely unsolvable, and and what would you do about it? And then the idea popped into my head of basically what led to the anti-tax of, hey, you would use a sovereign wealth fund at the local level, because these things are basically old people that never fucking die. So they're like the worst kind of boomer. And like local governments, I mean, there's so many of them. There's like almost 20,000 in the United States. And so I thought, when I was trying to pen test this thing in my brain, because I have like a hacker brain, I'm a cybersecurity guy by nature, I should say by profession, by occupation. And so what I kept going, I kept noticing, like, what would I do? If I saw this system and I'm a lefty, what would I do? And it's a really intense study of the left as well that came with it. And this is where I started to notice these patterns of this predation thing that they're doing. It's not at all random. That like there's a real rhyme and reason to it. And and there had not been any sort of economic explanation for it. So starting kind of around 2017, when I invented the anti-tax, that was when I started, kind of looking into the actual praxeology of Anarchotropism. And it's been kind of, I had two of the laws kind of within the first year, and when I, after listening to Dave Smith, I kind of got the third, and then the fourth, so that was been somewhere around 2018 was where I got the third one. He was talking about Hapa, and the fourth and fifth ones were probably 2019 ish, and 2021 was when I finally figured out the sixth law. And so I've had at least the first two for basically for about 4 or 5 years now. And they just came about as a part of trying to pen test and perfect this anti-tax strategy. And the reason I came out with them was that 2020 happened, and it was such a shit show. I'm like, oh, I thought I had a lot more time. How about that? Now the whole world is turning to now that I figured this thing out, the whole world is turning to shit, and I don't have any time to do anything about it. So it's like, okay, now I need to bootstrap a new organization. Mises GOP, I need to bootstrap it over, basically the latter 8 months of 2021 and and into now. And so it's been basically about 11 months ish. And okay, now that I've figured this thing out, everything I need to kind of return turn back the hands of time using this knowledge, so to speak.
Let me ask you real quick. It seemed like the government spent a lot of its political capital on the COVID stuff. People are kind of distrusting of them. Do you see the idea the government is going to maybe not start a war, but accept a war? Because it seems like when there's a war, people fall back into trusting the government because it actually is, in a sense, defending them from nuclear missiles or other kind of nonsense. They claim it's defending them so they can rebuild trust in the government through a war, or would a war further destabilize trust in the government?
Further destabilize. The problem is that they need a real attack on us, and they haven't gotten that. And the best they've had is like an attack on Ukraine, which is like a strategically irrelevant, not an ally nation. And there's no and Putin's not even all that scary, and particularly because they made him out to be like a meme, for like the last 5 years. It's like Russia, and it's like, though nobody quite takes Russia seriously anymore. They're like the boogeyman that wasn't, and and so they just can't. And they're spending their political capital and making things so much worse. It's like they're trying to follow the playbook of what you normally do in bad situations without understanding like the rhyme and reason to the playbook. They have no concept of strategy because they're boomers. And that's the way I kind of read this, is that they had a crisis. Normally when you have a crisis, you're supposed to bullshit the people into thinking you're going to restore order somehow. And that, not only did they not do that, they made it far worse. And it was like very clear they made it far worse. And so when you're really, really in a shit situation, normally what you do is, you subvert a war, you cause a war somehow through subversive and clandestine, and particularly clandestine means. And they didn't do that at all. Like you would do like a false flag attack on America is what you would do if you had any sort of strategy. But the idea that that you're going to convince us that Russia is such a big deal, when they're invading it, another country is not an ally and is not a threat to us at all. And it's like, why are we bothering with this? And so now they're just making things worse and worse and worse for themselves.
So go ahead. Let me sort of count a little bit now too. Like you said, things are definitely going to get worse and worse and worse. It seems to me the plan is certainly that's going to be the sort of false flag attack, is that there's going to be a pretty serious economic calamity. And then that's going to be blamed on the Russians, despite the fact that it's to people that sort of understand anything about economics and policy, that's not the case. That seems to be what the play to me is that they're going when the attack doesn't come, they're going to make the economic calamity be the attack, and that's what they're going to try and use to. I
mean, they're trying to do it right now with stagflation, saying it's caused by Putin.
Exactly.
Yeah, and this is just like clown world level shit. Where excuse my French on a Catholic podcast, but
all good.
Yeah, I mean they're I mean, they're just absolutely screwing the pooch on this. That this is not going to work for them. It's so obvious that they're lying. Like I saw Nancy Pelosi come out today, like on Jeff Dice shared it. I'm like, I responded like, they're not even trying to lie all that convincingly anymore. Like, I'm old enough that I remember the propaganda campaign for the war in Iraq. It was way more convincing back then. And I noted that how it seemed that the more control that that the regime had over the flow of information, the better they were at lying. And it's like they really put effort into it back then. Like like Nancy Pelosi came out today and she was like, "Oh, the reason that inflation is going up has to do with like greedy corporations and Vladimir Putin." And actually government and that and our critics were saying that it's the government spending because all the money we're printing. They're completely wrong. Money printing and and government spending are what make inflation go down.
It was
like literally said all of this.
It was incredible. Like the quote was something along the lines of government spending decreases the national debt. Like, it was the most absurd statement I've ever heard in my entire life.
It's like they're not even trying to lie convincingly or coherently anymore.
I think you made also an interesting point that points to why they were better when they had more control. I think it's because when you have more control of the means of disseminating information, you could sort of construct a very elaborate lie and no one can gainsay you. Whereas if you construct an elaborate lie in let's say now, where you don't have absolute control of the means of the dissemination of information, someone can just go along and say no. So you construct simple lies that are usually also, versus the Nigerian prince scam thing where they word it deliberately bad to attract all the people who would be filtered out, by it. So that everyone who buys into it is is a legit customer or a legit victim. So there's also that aspect to it that, you go simple because it doesn't matter. We're going to pop it anyway. And you also filter in all your appropriate victims.
Yeah, but the problem is that, that weakness, with that idea is that weakness always invites aggression. And when you're doing stuff like that, you're showing how weak you are. And I can't take one look at that. I can take one look at that and say, gee, if I were like a corporation or something like this, I would be looking at them as, a regime that I would want to take over, like formally take over. And this is happened all throughout history where, if you were a really, really good king or who was, and by good, I mean moral, not good as in talented. If you're a really moral king who really left taxes and let the free market be the free market, what would end up happening over the span of maybe a generation or two is that you would get a class of banksters, money lenders, particularly, who would now try to either overthrow you or debt trap you. And, one of the two, and they would usually win eventually. And, they would basically be the banksters would always become the king of kings every single time. Like, who won the Game of Thrones? The bank. And seriously, it was the Iron Bank. They won they won that war. And so like that's happened like basically since Sumer a lot. And so if you were a moral king who didn't really quite understand the whole consolidating power thing, eventually the banksters would overthrow you. And so like this is not so them being like weak like this and like really like projecting it. I'm looking around like, okay, who's it going to be? Because the thing you need to do historically is provide more order and justice than the incumbent regime. And this was a common practice, it was popularized by Islam because they got to take over for Rome, and you can imagine it's a republic and they have really high taxes, much higher than monarchy. And you're coming in with like basically a monarchical conquest of North Africa. And the reason that Islam spread like wildfire is, Rome had like ridiculously high taxes on their colonies. And so Islam's coming in saying, hey, how about just 3%? And they're like, oh, wow,
praise be to Allah.
Allahu Akbar, Allah. I just say so. And eventually the Christians started adopting this, that when a king would take over, I remember this happened at least a few times in France, where the king of one city manages to take over another city. Yeah, and the people are like they're ready. The people and the lords are ready to resist, and the king is dead. And basically he's tasked with occupying them now. And so what he would do is, okay, no taxes for like 2 years. He's like, wow, I'll hail the king. Long may he live forever. and so it's like when I see like, okay, what's Vladimir Putin's task? How is he going to occupy the Ukraine? Answer is he's not. The real answer is if he wants to just occupy them with no problem, he would cut their taxes in half. And it's like, well, I mean, that'll work. and then he'll have a large anti-corruption campaign against them, and he'll actually start restoring order, because that's Austro-Tropism. Chaos demands power to be used against it to restore order. This goes all the way back to Genesis. The spirit, the earth was dark and void, and the spirit of God hovered over the waters, and God said, let there be light. And basically there's a juxtaposition of chaos that God applies force to create the natural order. And and this is exactly what life does. This is, I mean, you see this all the way down at a biological level. What does life do? It eschews entropy, pushes it out. It pushes it has more chaos on the outside of it than the inside of it, and that's how it stays alive, because once there's more chaos on the inside, you're dead. And the whole reason you have death is that it's a cleansing mechanism that allows those resources to be redistributed to life forms that are better at, or at least for the present time, are better, have a higher production rate of order. So this is so this archotropism thing, it's not just like an economic thing, it's a biological thing. This is the essential action of life, is to produce more order inside of you and more entropy on the outside of you. And so and at every point life is applying force to chaos to create order. And that's metabolism right there. So when Putin is trying to consume or metabolize Ukraine into Russia, all he has to do is win the war, and then say it's again, it's a peacekeeping mission, and then just say, hey, if you come back, if you stop fighting, I'm going to cut your taxes by 75% or something like that. And I think a lot of people stop by and like, really, 75% reduction, deal. Hey, long live Putin.
Let's get into the anti-tax a little bit. Would sum up the anti-tax a little bit, and maybe anti-tax, and I know you want to talk a little bit about the Great Reset. So if you can kind of just go off a little bit on anti-tax and Great Reset, then we'll go from there.
Okay. And how are we going to tie? I'm going to have to figure out how to tie this into Augustine.
It might even be in two separate topics. But yeah, just give a brief overview of the anti-tax if you don't mind. We'll start there.
Brief idea. The idea of the anti-tax is, okay, how would you get a government to cut taxes all the way down to zero and still keep its essential government services? The answer is that you would have a large network of sovereign wealth funds at the local level, not at the county level, not at the state level, definitely not the federal level, because at the local level there's extreme competition for tax rates. Not just for tax rates, but for spending. This is why your local government is typically the best, because they're and consequently they're the least objectionable, the least political, because they do everything right. And it's like when things are going well, you don't really care. It's when the federal government is a shit show and you really care about it. And that's I mean, it's a perverse incentive of politics where it's like they have the local governments have so much competition, and they're just so much better at their job by comparison to the federal government, to the point where they get no scrutiny at all, and you can do basically anything except anything that's going to make you uncompetitive, and it works out well. So most people have no clue who their mayor is. They have a much better idea of who the president is, because the president is the problem that they have to be solving, and the mayor has everything under control. And so if you put a sovereign wealth fund, again, like almost 20,000 of these in the United States, if you put one of these sovereign wealth funds in every single one of these, you're going to have a race to the bottom in terms of more spending for for less taxation, because this interest bearing mechanism is the sovereign wealth fund is a very real kind of investment strategy that you are it's a real disconnect between the spending and taxation, because now that this is normally taxation has to be zero sum from predation, but now we've introduced a positive sum element to where not all of that tax revenue is zero sum. Some of it is positive sum, and so the state is actually producing its own resources by capital allocation, which is a good thing. And so we've actually managed to make the predator productive, and through competition, and basically through substitution taxes, this thing can gradually take over all of taxation, not just at the local level, where it gradually substitutes positive sum returns from the sovereign wealth fund for the zero sum returns of taxation. It would and by the way, there's also economic growth at the same time. This whole way through, there's economic growth, so it's like a tax. You get to have your tax cut and eat it too, sort of thing. And so but at the state and federal levels too, you can do the same thing, where just have them pass substitution taxes on your local anti-tax, and that way you would have at every locality you would have different state, federal, and local tax burdens based on how well they manage their fund, and how productive they are, how good they are at creating these economies. And you essentially made the government a for-profit institution.
So just to understand this by analogy, sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. Okay, so just to understand this by analogy, imagine the state, especially the local state here, as a junkie sort of addicted to taxation and spending. You're trying to essentially rehabilitate him into a productive member of society by weaning him off of taxation itself, right? Would that be a fair analogy for it or not?
Kinda. It's more. I think of it more like the domestication process.
Okay. Yeah, it's a wild animal. It's a predator. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm taking it from like a I don't know, what was it, like an auroch, that was like the ancestor of modern cows, or like maybe like a wolf, and I'm turning it into like a puppy, or I'm turning it into a dog. It's like a wolf is a better from the wolf to the dog is probably a better thing, where this is more of a domestication to kind of tool.
Okay, got it.
Uncast, you got anything you want to add?
I did not know. I think this is probably a baby in the background.
Oh, okay.
So let's if no one has anything else to add, I have a question for Andrew. If no one has anything else to want to add to the anti-tax, Austro-Thomism, that kind of stuff, move on to the next question.
Actually, let me see. I did have one question, because earlier you, I don't know if predicted, but said it's possible that a company or something like that might take over, I think, the American government. Is that correct? Not take over exactly, but control it through like debtors, like they did to kings in some modern form, right? Because I was curious about that. And my question would be, if this did happen, do you think it would happen in a sort of revolution within the form where they try to keep the same formal apparatus going and keep it up as sort of a sham? Well, it already is one, but even more of a sham. It's the sham of the sham. Or do you think they'd actually change it formally?
Yeah, I think it would be a formal thing. This kind of the way that remember how Augustus did it when he took over Rome, and he kept the Senate around as sort of a vestigial institution. But he was officially and legally the guy making like all of the decisions.
Okay.
And they were kind of just there to rubber stamp it. I think you're going to have a similar situation where because the Achilles heel of any republic is how incredibly corrupt it is. And so basically what corporations are probably I'm just saying this is how I would do it. And I'm thinking that, okay, I'm 29 and I haven't been around for that long. And if I can figure this out, you bet that the smartest corporations on earth can figure this out. And they probably did it a long time ago. So so they can induce the government to just be embarrassing itself all day long and just be absolutely incompetent. They can make all kinds of laws that just blow up all the time to where they're a shitty provider of order.
Yeah.
And so all they have to do at that point is provide more order, and that gives them the at least the moral legitimacy. And what you and because this thing is so corrupt, what you would do is you might hire a certain president's son to come be an advisor on your board, and this gives you access to the guy making all of the decisions to continue making the incumbent regime really, really awful, because whenever the incumbent regime is more awful, that results in profit for the corporation, who is now seeking to kind of take over that dominion and from the current regime. And you could do that with all of the presidents and congressmen and senators' sons. And the only people it doesn't really work for is the state bureaucrats, because there's so fucking many of them. There's 2 million employees. There's way too many. But the so that's why you get resistance from like the State Department, but basically all of the elected forms are where the all of the elected offices are cheap and easy. I mean, they'll sell their grandma for a $2,500 check. So, and they're the ones with more, and they do technically have more power. It's more difficult for them to use it, but they do have more power. And the so they would so the corporations are merely incentivized to buy off the not just buy off, but buy in the legislatures into the new system. And then all you have to do is from there is get the rubber stamp of approval from the Justice Department. And that's pretty easy to do if if basically the judge between you and the State Department, because the State Department is going to come after you, the judge in that case is going to be between basically it's got imagine like kind of the way Dave Smith says, imagine you and I have a problem and I'm going to pick the judge and it's going to be confirmed by my wife. It's like that. This is a situation that the corporations are attempting to set up right now. Is why we're going to get more and more right-wing justices, not left-wing justices. And I think and I'm going to make a prediction that people are going to think, no way, where this black woman judge probably will end up being a little more moderate than she's being portrayed as. She's probably going to be, she'll probably end up, I know it seems like she's a nut job, but she'll probably end up being, closer to a John Roberts than a Sonia Sotomayor. You know what I mean? Definitely not a Ginsburg, definitely not a Breyer. And I'm betting that's the way this is going because, if I want to have a solid, right-wing trend, I need to have that rubber stamp, because whenever the State Department sues, I want my judge to, rule my way. And by the way, all of them, the new justices, they have all of them have a long history. Including Elena Kagan and Sonia Sotomayor, have a long history of ruling on the side of corporations, particularly when it's not a partisan issue. And partisan issues are mostly distractions. But the idea, here being that, hey, that they're going to be focused on the circus, and not focused on the corporate aspect, where the corporations usually win almost every time. So they've basically secured the Supreme Court. They're just, all they need is a big enough right now is the infrastructure for providing more order privately and cheaply, and then they need some sort of seal of approval from the legislature and for their new venture, that the politicians, family members are going to be well invested in, coincidentally. And then they need to have that lawsuit case with the, from the State Department and the permanent bureaucracy, who was directly threatened by that. And at that point, it goes to the Supreme Court judges that they've picked that who will, just rubber stamp it. At that point, the bloodless coup is complete. Hopefully bloodless. You never know with the State Department.
Yeah.
But but yeah, that's how you would do it.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I was just talking about this with Caleb earlier, that our enemies seem to have shot themselves in the foot, because remember, the kind of justice that they're selling is social justice usually.
Mm-hmm.
So, I kind of likened in my head to remember that verse in Genesis that the serpent will bite Mary's heel and she will crush his head. Well, I think of both the evil corporations like Disney, Apple, Amazon. They're all the ones I'm looking at as like people who would take over, for the regime. And the regime is also like really evil. The State Department is like absolutely, got like Satan.
Oh, yeah.
And so the way
I think a good way to Moldbug has a name for him. I think he calls him the vampire of the world.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or the arsonist. He said it's either the vampire or the arsonist, because ever sucks out of the blood out of other nations or sets them on fire. Yeah, continue. Sorry.
And so it's funny because I see them both as like competing serpents biting the other's heel. So it's like forget like they're not even biting Mary's heel. They're not even biting the seed of Mary's heel. Not even biting his heel. They're biting their own heel. they're like, evil seems to be that incompetent. Or that was just like a joke in my head that just from from when I saw it, and because. The whole idea, the whole reason they're doing all of this is to take over and start providing justice to the people. Problem is they're selling the wrong shit. They're selling injustice, and because they're kind of idiots. So I mean, that's kind of like leaving the space open for anybody with a what must be done strategy, wink wink, or like an Elon Musk or someone like that to just come along and say, I could probably do this better. And and so if you can get any sort of privatization of like local governments, if you could manage to somehow turn those into private corporations, if you had some mechanism for that would do it. That would give that would be all it would take to to at least begin the avalanche or begin the snowball effect that leads to an actual private law society.
And Bevan, anything you want to add? Or
I suspect, unless someone else has anything else, I think it's probably a pretty good tie into what you wanted to say about the Great Reset, because I hear corporations trying to assume the authority to dictate everything. Like it's sounding a lot like the sort of thing that you would hear from the World Economic Forum or BlackRock or something like this.
That's exactly the people.
Okay.
Sounds like something Klaus Schwab would say while dressed in funny robes.
You will own nothing and you will like it. No, seriously.
I saw that.
I said nuts. Yeah. I was nuts.
That was really, really weird. That was so weird.
Did anyone else?
How weird that felt.
Did anybody see the anti-woke article? It was put up by Bloomberg. Anybody else read that?
Oh, I did not.
They put out an article called about the Gen Z's anti-woke movement and about people who are like rejecting the workforce to stay at home. And you actually read the article, and it's about one guy who got laid off and moves into a trailer with his mom. And it's like he's like, I just don't want to go back to work anymore. I don't have any dependents. It's like, he has 3 kids. It's not anti-woke. It's just a deadbeat dad.
Man.
But if you read, it's just a story about deadbeat dad. But the article is sold as an anti-woke movement from Gen Z, and it was really weird. It's an example of one of the Bloomberg put an article about like maybe it's good that Americans can't get what they want out of stores anymore. Like they can't get eggs or something. Or just do less. Like it's very the elitism that they're having is signing more now. You can easily see it in the article. It's like the headlines are very stupid. Like he's like, wow, that's insane. It's anti-woke. When you read the article, it's like, no, this is bullshit. It's one guy who made a deadbeat dad.
I know I think there's an anti-work subreddit that's sort of blown up a little bit. That's
also, I think got destroyed because it for the infighting.
No, because also one of their guys appeared on Fox News, and I think
that's
like
right.
a 3-minute segment or something, and it was awful. But anti-work guys were embarrassed and pissed that the guy went on, and everyone else was mocking them, and they kind of just went down in infighting. I think it was such another very weird instance that I cannot believe happened in the real world and is not confined to some speculative fiction for the science fiction stuff. I just can't believe it happened.
Yeah, it's like I saw that too, and but yeah, with like the Great Reset, it's like I think that's something that both of those, that both sides, I mean the corporate side and the regime side, have kind of missed, is that you can only fuck society up so much before before you have to make it better, and neither of them really has a decent plan of making things better. They just want to own shit, and it's like, who wants to own a garbage dump and have it, and not just like a garbage dump, where that's making you money by letting people dump their shit, but like just one that's just progressively getting worse and worse and worse. It's like, I mean, it's like imagining wanting to own farmland so you can let it turn back into desert. It's like, that seems to be their attitude right now, and they haven't quite grasped that, the whole point of this really is to make a profit. It's like, I mean, that deadbeat dad, he's not paying any taxes, he's not generating any income. There's no, I mean, there's nothing. This guy's a pure cost to the system, and maybe that helps the regime take a little bit more power in the meantime by punishing the people who are making a profit. But that's not going to last. I mean, this is how, again, the Achilles heel of any Republican system or any democratic system is the corruption. This is why. And because you end up squandering all of society's resources at scale, and so eventually you get a guy who's just like, well, how about I don't do that? How about I'm maybe I can call myself Charlemagne, King of the Franks, and I'm going to consolidate like all of Europe under myself, and I'm not going to pretend like I'm like legitimate or anything. I will eventually, when I get crowned Holy Roman
Not right
Emperor.
now.
But I really, but when I'm conquering the whole thing, it's like, I'm going to kick the Lombards' butts, and I'm going to take all of their stuff. It's going to be mine, and I'm not going to make any pretense about it. And when I want to finally make myself official, I call it my buddy the Pope in Rome, and I say, that bitch in Byzantium is a woman, and technically a woman can't be Holy Roman Emperor. So how about we push that crown my way? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a deal here. And so the Pope understood. He saw the writing on the wall, and he's like, how about I I'll tell you what, how about I travel to France tomorrow, and I'm going to put the crown on your head. And Empress Irene is going to get be ticked like a month and a half later when she finds out. But she's a woman. What's she going to do about it? Nothing. And except and she ends up she ended up getting betrayed and overthrown later anyway, because she screwed over her son. She blinded her. She basically, the way you would she was having a power struggle with her son, and she blinded him in order to prevent him from becoming king. Unfortunately, that opened the door for, I think it was the former emperor's brother, to come in and take over. I might be messing up some of the historical facts there, but that's the basic idea. It didn't work out for her. So, that like you could totally be like Charlemagne like that, and instead of screwing over the whole kingdom, now that you've completely acquired, which is basically all of Europe, now you can just say, well, how about we run this thing like a business? She did, and then he screwed everything up afterwards when he died, because he broke his kingdom up, and he just broke it up into pieces and gave it to his sons. What he should have done was turned it into a corporation, handed them shares, and let them, collectively elect a prime minister. Very, very different course of human history if he had done that.
Yeah.
But he did it.
Let me go back a little bit, because you and maybe this is something that I don't quite understand about archotropism. You mentioned who would want to rule over a garbage heap, or who would want to burn down their farm. My understanding is that was sort of one of the parts of the principles of archotropism, is that the goal is not the generation of wealth for a certain class of people. They or a generation of power differential. It's this Milton idea of it's better to rule in hell than to serve in heaven. Is they don't really care about what they have. They want to make sure they have more than the people around them.
Exactly.
So isn't it very natural that this is sort of the way that they want to go? Is that they're very happy to burn everything to the ground if they're the ones that are left holding anything.
Yeah, they are. The problem is it only works for so long. This is the idea that underlies why the the devil is not a good person to make a bargain with, because he can't, he cannot not defraud you. He will not stab you in the back. And so he'll get, it'll work for like a short period of time, but because this is a high time preference strategy, which is like the strategy of the devil is always a high time preference strategy. Him as a high time preference person, his hatred for humanity, his hatred for God is just so much that like he can defer gratification on stabbing you in the back and betraying you and making your life miserable only so long. And and eventually he's just going to come back. And come back and bite you. It's like an ontologically certain thing. He will come back and bite you. And you shouldn't think it's like sometime in the far future. You should think it's like probably sometime fairly imminent. That's his time preference. And so, and again, if like you have anybody who's like, well, how about I just don't do that? How about I don't make a deal with the devil? How about I don't, worship Satan? How about I follow Alex Jones the way I'm supposed to?
Follow my prophet, Alex Jones. Yeah.
Exactly, the Oracle of Austin. How about I, listen to God's holy prophet and Alex Jones, and
the new Eucharist is the oh my god, I had a joke and I completely screwed it up because I forgot the name of the supplement. What are the supplements called? Superman Vitality. That's the new Eucharist.
Yeah, Superman Vitality.
There we go.
He also used to sell water filters.
Oh, I have the water filters. Water filters great, by the way.
You gotta get fluoride makes you gay. That's all I know about Alex Jones. Fluoride makes you gay.
Yep, and that's why you need to take the iodine. And but yeah, so you can follow the guy who does that and actually builds all of civilization and has a much more powerful military that can kick your butt, because you've been spending all of your time squandering civilization and squandering your military might. And this is why the East has never worked. So the East, basically like the West is it. It's the only thing that's ever actually worked. It doesn't work all the time, but it worked. It worked at all. And the East has just always been a shit show. And because the East has never quite gotten this Augustinian concept correctly, because this is, again, so, if you understand that, when I say love, I mean, or I say order, I mean love in the Augustinian Trinitarian sense. And so sin is anything that is not that. And archotropism is basically, so love is order, sin is chaos. And so basically sin demands power to put it down and to restore it to love. And so they never quite figured that out. The East has just never figured that out. And so they've basically been stuck in the 6th century this entire time. I mean, they never evolved past like the 6th century. This is what it never clicked for them exactly how love works. By the way, getting back to Augustine, all heresies, I'm not aware of any at least I should say I'm not aware of any heresy that doesn't somehow stem from a misunderstanding of how love works, how Trinitarian love works, that it's this reciprocated agape model. You trade value for value, and that creates more value. Okay, so the Father loves the Son loves the Father, that creates the Holy Spirit, who's that bond of love, who's also personified love. It sends out its nature like that way. It creates things after its own nature. We see this again in the Bible where it says, okay, what are the fruits of the Spirit? Love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. So basically, we see the Spirit is love. Its products is love. It's so it creates after its own nature, and all of those other fruits are kind of as Augustine said with sin. All of those other aspects of like joy, grace, and all that stuff are just aspects of love. Joy is that passion, that really good feeling of love. When you say I feel so good, I love this person, you're talking about joy. And it's the joy of love. Peace is kind of obvious because you're not in conflict, you're in love. And self-control is obvious because it has to be, agape love is self-sacrificial. And if you want to say, okay, so why does this create an infinite person? Well, you have two infinite gods who love each other and create a third infinite, not a third God, but but the two the persons of God. So why is it two persons of God love each other and create a third? Well, it's the nature of love. And this is so, and you would never figure this out kind of by yourself. You would have to it would have to be told to you by revelation so that you could presuppose it.
I think Peter Kreeft has a wonderful point where you know, he imagines this is a way he introduces a way to conceptualize Christ to non-believers. You know, imagine a place where all the unbelievers and believer philosophers are having a debate. Then God appears in human forms and just says "boo" behind all the unbelieving philosophers. You know, he's a data point in the debate himself. And so I just thought it's a very neat way to conceptualize it. But also, I have one observation and maybe one question about the Great Reset, if no one wants to ask anything else first.
Go for it.
All right, thank you. So first observation is that I think the state, this very small state of Liechtenstein, that most, I think, runs like a corporation, whose in fact leader is personal friends of Hans Hermann Hoppe, and who Hoppe helped edit his book, The State in the Third Millennium, where he basically advocates for exactly this: the state run as a sort of transitioning to a corporation. I don't think it's a coincidence that the royal family is Catholic, by the way. If I find that an interesting observation. But also, secondly, I'm reading this is on more in international politics and how it would affect the New World Order and the Great Reset. I'm reading a book which is a debate between Alexander Dugin, whose name is getting some mileage on Twitter now after the Ukrainian war. He's more or less the preeminent geopolitical philosopher of Russia. And Olavo de Carvalho, or Olavo de Carvalho in English, I suppose, who's, I think, the most famous Brazilian conservative, more right-wing philosopher who had read Mises, who, you know, had read and appreciated Mises and Rothbard, but stayed within a more traditionalist perspective metaphysically. Well, also a Catholic. Dugin, I have no idea what he is, but he makes this point early in the debate, which is published in book format. This is back in 2011, where he says, okay, so he believes there are free powers, essentially, which array themselves into free projects for global dominance. And I'm quoting here, which he tentatively calls the Russian Chinese, the Western, which he says is sometimes mistakenly called Anglo-American, and the Islamic projects. The agents that personify these projects, which I'm really interested in if you agree with his assessment here, are as follows. 1, the ruling elite of Russia and China, particularly the Secret Service of these two countries. 2, the Western financial elite, as represented particularly in the Bilderberg Club, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the Trilateral Commission. And 3, the Muslim Brotherhood, the religious leaders of the several Islamic countries and the governments of the Muslim countries. And he also notes, and this is important to see if you agree with this or not, of these free agents, only the first one, the Russian Chinese and essentially the Secret Service, which runs these two countries, is the only one that can be conceived in strictly geopolitical terms, since its plans and actions correspond to well-defined national and regional interests. The second, the Western one, the financial elites, is more advanced, which is more advanced in the implementation of its plans for world government, places itself explicitly above any national interests, including those of its countries of origins, which only serve as its base of operations. And the third, the Islamic one, which I believe was far more prominent in 2011 than it is now, 10 years later. In the third, conflicts of interest between national governments and the overarching goal of a universal caliphate are always ultimately resolved in favor of the latter, which, though currently existing only as an ideal, enjoys symbolic authority founded upon Quranic commandments that no Islamic government would dare to overtly challenge. So I'd like your assessment on that.
Oh yeah, that's exactly right. That the the Islamic world and the Western world are both ones based on religion. Where in some sense, that the Westernism is a religion, and it's not not great, but it's basically distilled Protestantism, and but Islam is the other religion, whereas the East is pretty much entirely secular. It's, I mean, there is no real religious government there, and some people like to claim that that there isn't. There isn't. That's clearly just not the case, and it's never been that way historically. and so I had a debate on Twitter the other day about this, that Russia is a real Orthodox country,
really hardcore, yeah.
Like, no, it's like that. I mean, that's a very, if anything, it's very, very recent. That just in the last like 20 years, and only because communism was such a shit show, and even then, the government doesn't reflect it at all. That's not at all reflect an Orthodox sort of praxeology, so to speak. But it reflects just a completely secular version. There's no real difference between that and China, because if you look at like what are Russia and China really both have in common? Terminal demographics. It's like, so yeah, it's a complete, and when I say that, the difference between a Protestant love is that there's a real overemphasis on the self, in that love. It's a very self-centered kind of love. That's why it doesn't work. It's why it decomposes. It started as one and now it's decomposed into 37,000, kind of like a decomposing body does, where it just breaks apart. And whereas the Eastern version is just completely broken. There's no production at all. And because you're saying that okay, because the Holy Spirit does not get any of his nature at all from the Son, which is not what Catholics believe. Basically they've said that they've said one of two things is true, is that either the Son does not reciprocate the Father's love, which is why there's no third person that's created, or that their concept of love is unproductive. So okay, it does not, or at least it does not produce after its kind, which is the Catholic version, which is the biblical version, that we see from the fruits of the Spirit. That, remember, the Spirit is love, and and love produces after its own kind. It produces fruits that are also love. And so when you have that concept of a Trinity that is unproductive, it's an unproductive Trinity, where the one person, the one Father does all of it. You're basically saying the King has to do all of the production for the rest of the people, and that's just like, okay, that's nonsense, and that's not how the system works, and it's not how it's ever going to work. Is kind of irrational, and it's just it's doomed for failure. And you see that in their terminal demographics of these are regimes that are not going to exist.
Yeah, and just so if anyone is interested, the passage I read is from the first segment from Olavo de Carvalho.
You might want to spell that in the chat. I'm just
I'm Brazilian,
text me that, and I'll add it to the description.
All right.
So yeah, like responding to the point you just made about, hey, there's like these three kinds of civilizations we have. One is the Eastern type, which is entirely secular, and has real production problems. To say very least, because it has terminal demographics all over the place. Yeah, and then there's the Islamic. Then there's the Islamic system. Which has. It does not quite have the production problem. It really has the killing problem, because it doesn't. Because at least in the Eastern system, which you could charitably say is run by the Orthodox, which again is being charitable, because there's only 220 million of them. It's not that much, and compared to like 1.2 or something like that, 1 billion, something like that, Muslims, and so the but with Islam, the problem is, that, they're kind of stuck. They don't have any sort of generation mechanism. Remember, all value must be generated by love. Again, it's that value for value. I will you some good, you will me some good, and that creates good after its own kind. Love for love creates more love. And that's the Catholic pattern of how love actually works, is that when love, that two people love each other, then that creates three. Duh. And so, and again, that's the image of God that we're made in, is that love for love creates more love. And and so with Islam, because it's like they have a super unity of God, where God is just one person, there's not even there's not any generation at all. And what they ended up doing, that kind of like fixed the problem, is that they ended up they ended up installing that their definition of love means kind of submission to Allah. And so what you ended up with what was that an entirely thing where entire civilization where you have extremely good ability to be anti-heresy, anti-degeneracy, all of that stuff, because they don't care about what wanting you to be a good person or a productive person or anything like that. They just like, you will do exactly this. This is exactly your role. It's hardwired in. It's the same kind of system that you see in India with Hinduism and the caste system, where it's like, this is your role. It's like, there is no like movement around. There is no choice in it. This is how you're doing it. It's kind of a lot more like an ant colony sort of thing. And when you're doing and that's the non-Christian tradition, to where there is no choice in this matter at all. And by the way, so when the West became pre-secular, shocker, it became a whole lot less free, big on the whole free and choosing thing, because love by nature needs to be chosen. It cannot be coerced, and that it's the one thing that definitionally cannot be coerced. Down to the logical level, that if you coerce love, that's not love, it's rape. Or that's the closest word in English to it. So that definitionally it cannot be coerced. It's even better than Bitcoin, in that matter, because with Bitcoin, I can still take it from you by by stealing the mnemonic seed, and you can say that, okay, well, the private key is going to take you 1 trillion years with a supercomputer, that would cost you hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's just not worth it. That's why I'm going to use the $20 wrench to beat you for 5 minutes until you until you give me the mnemonic seed, or tell me where the key is hidden, and I'm just going to take it from you that way. So Bitcoin is extremely resistant to to being confiscated, but love by definition cannot be confiscated. That's why God is sovereign. There's no taking God. Because love does not require force, and force is antithetical to love. So so like, at least with the Orthodox tradition, and okay, they still accept most of those tenets, to where like, okay, hey, love cannot be taken by force, and they still have some production, so at least they're still a little bit better than Islam, which is like completely stuck in the 6th century. And whereas like the Orthodox have like the Eastern countries have managed to really adopt a lot more of like the Western ways, kind of, like they've adopted them economically and militarily, kind of, but they didn't, but they went way overboard on the on what the cost function of that was, which was, okay, they forgot to have children. Instead, they really, what they did was they had a different kind of production. They stopped producing children and started producing gizmos and widgets and or bombs and shit. And so all they really did was switch one production for the other. Whereas like with Islam, it's just been like no production at all. Well, I was going to make the final point about the Western civilizations. It was like, we have we basically whole thing goes the thesis of Tom Wood's history book, which is excellent. How the Catholic Church built Western civilization is that, hey, we have a kind of starting with the monks in the not just with the monks, but with the when the barbarians invaded Europe. When the barbarians invaded Eastern Europe, what happened? The Constantinople like burned to the ground, and it never came back. Not really. Well, I mean, it's Istanbul today, but I should say, Constantinople became Istanbul, and North Africa kind of became what it still is today. And whereas when the barbarians invaded Rome, they became Catholic. It's like and so basically the kings are like, it's not a bad idea, and you get even one king who was one of the Merovingians, who goes to Gerber, and it's like, or no, not Gerber. I forget which one it is, but he goes to it. It was Gerber. It would have been one of the Carolingians, kings of the Roman the Holy Roman Empire, which is ruled by the Franks, not the Romans, ironically. And one of those kings, I think his name was King Otto. I want to say Otto the First. So. He went to Gerber, who was who would later become Pope Sylvester, and he writes to him saying, I have a kingdom to rule and I have no idea how to do it. And this math book you sent me is really interesting. Can you come and teach me how to do all of this stuff? Because I really need your help. it's like he says, my education has been sorely neglected. Like, okay, you're a barbarian. It's like your whole education is about how to kill people. And and so, like, you know, when the barbarians invaded Rome, they thought that the most honorable thing you could the most honorable role in society you could be, it was like mass murderer, you know, or warrior as they called it. And and you know, by the time they left, they're like, you know, we need some just war principles, and you know, we really shouldn't be fighting each other. Perhaps we should focus on this whole production thing, and you know, because we're seeing the way the monks are doing it, because this is like the most ingenious system humanity ever came up with up to that point, was like the monasteries, you know, where the monks were figuring out all of science, because again, it's the only place where we ever had like scientific inquiry as distinct from technology, because other places have invented technology, you know, that were not, you know, Christian at all, you know, like the Sumerians were really good at astronomy and all that. So there is technological development fairly independent of scientific inquiry, but the only time you actually get real sustained scientific inquiry is in the West, where it's like, we want to understand how everything works, not you know, and we want to produce, you know, all of this knowledge that ends up creating all of civilization. And so they did it unpaid. It's like that was the key, is that no one wanted to do it, you know, and because they were like, oh, it might get stolen, and you know, it might get, you know, they had a problem with that the profit incentive was kind of self-defeating, that they would be putting in all this cost and other people would be reaping the benefits. Monasteries had no such problem. And so it solved the problem. Because we have, again, love, you know, the characteristics of love in the Roman sense is that it has to produce love, you know, more of its own kind, you know, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. You know, by the way, patience and self-control are the essence of low time preference. So, you know, if you have a love that doesn't do that, it's necessarily sin. And, you know, but we have this idea that, okay, you know, one of the things that love does is it is grounded in truth, because if love is not grounded in truth, then it's not love, it's a lie. You know, and you know, love rejoices in the truth, and it says that the Bible, you know, in 1 Corinthians says love rejoices in the truth. Not just that, is that, you know, the truth is also revelatory; it reveals truth. And you see this, that, you know, when you really you know, love someone, you really know them really, really well. When you really love something, means you really know it well. You know, and it's not just so not only is love grounded in reality, it also, you know, affixes your perspective to be much more in line with reality, because that's what truth is in the Thomistic sense, is that you are you know, truth is when my mind is far more in cohesion, in order with the actual reality. And so we have this concept of love that, you know, that again comes from that reciprocated agape love. It's not just one way, it's both ways, and it creates more of its own kind. So we have this, what, you know, as our God, our definition of God. But that, you know, what ends up happening is you end up with the people who are naturally very productive of more truth, like the scientific method. That's why we don't simply use a priori stuff, because, I mean, look at Aristotle. He had an entirely a priori consistent view of physics, and it was entirely wrong. And, you know, because he didn't use the a priori method to check. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, he didn't use the empirical method to check. You know, it's like you would think that would happen, and he didn't do it. And that's the problem with only using an a priori science, is that you can be and it's also the problem with the transcendental argument for God, is that you can be logically,
we want to get into that a little bit.
You can be logically consistent all you want and just be completely wrong, because that's not what reality looks like. And that, you know, you actually have to, you know, and this idea that you would check your theories based upon against reality was an idea that was invented by the Catholic Church. We invented the scientific method. And if you want to go back to like the earliest inventors of, you know, of every single scientific discipline, you'll notice, one, how many of them are like all like Catholic priests or Catholic monks, and secondly, you will also notice how many of them are oh, what was that? What was that name? Shoot, I just brain farted on the name of that. Jesuits. There we go.
Jesuits, yes.
Wasn't for the longest time theology was called the Jesuit science?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yes, actually.
it's-
Yeah, and
All-
also,
all
yeah, sorry.
Jesuits. And so basically, with the West, it's like, yeah, the Catholic Church created the West from the ground up. And again, like when we started, the thing we had to work with was a bunch of people who thought mass murder was like the best thing you could do. And
Mhm.
that was where we started. So it's like we really built this thing from the ground up. And we've managed to come a long way to where, okay, they still think mass murder, the president of the United States and Congress is still the highest thing you can aspire to. But you could also be CEO, and there are other things that are better. There's like CEO, there's Pope, and there's like president of the company, and maybe there's a lot of other really, really good things besides mass murderer. We've had a lot of progress.
a lot of progress
With
yeah.
the barbarians, and I
Yeah.
didn't say it was perfect, but it's like we made it a whole lot less shitty. And so when eventually you have a problem right there. This is my archotropism view of read the sixth law of archotropism, that but and the fifth law as well. But the fifth law is fifth law of archotropism. I'm just going to define that. The fifth law of archotropism for people is that any system of power naturally accumulates order across time. Any open system accumulates chaos across time. It accumulates entropy, and that's an open. I should say. I'm sorry. That's a closed system. In a closed system, power accumulates entropy across time. This is what gives you the four turning cycle. Because anyway, but this is all in the sixth law of archotropism. Is that any action, oh shoot, I'm brain farting on it, but like it's basically the one that every action demands an equal and opposite reaction. So, and by demand, I mean that in the economic sense, because this is order and chaos are if you imagine these are their demand curves. The more one moves, the higher the price comes for the other, and they're because they're necessarily mutually exclusive. The more you have of one, the more pent up demand you have for the other. So when you have like a 10,500 years of the Holocene where where capitalism is possible, and you have 10,500 years of that, of just pent up demand for order and order and order, and you finally get a system that creates that like can mass produce order, which is the Catholic version of love. And now all of a sudden, that demand for chaos that has been that demand for order that's been pent up for 10,500 years explodes into the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, and again, and into the Industrial Age. And of course, when you've had 10,500 years of pent up demand explode just like that, where the left was just getting crushed for a solid like 1,500 years. Well, what happens? Okay, you get a massive, overproduction of order. Well, not over. There's no maximum, but basically the left is just furious, and that's when you get Karl Marx. That's when you get the socialist revolutions. When you get the progressive era, and 2 world wars right off the bat. And so that's due to the forces of pent up demand. And so when you have all of that, it's going to you're going to get a pushback eventually. The chaos is going to push back eventually. But the problem is that the whole playing field again is kind of tilted in the right's favor. Because think about because remember archotropism is not just like an economics phenomenon, it's also a biological phenomenon, but we call it metabolism there. And when life is the job of life is to take inorganic matter and turn it into life. It's to push entropy out and keep order in. And so again, it's like you're applying force, you're applying power to chaos to get order. So this whole game of life is already slanted in the right's favor, because we want order, and all life wants order. All life is, or it's an order creating engine. And so you're going to get like a kind of a retrenchment. That's what the Protestantism is. unfortunately, we agree far more with the Protestants. Where again, there's again 3 kinds of Christianity. Is the Roman Catholics are the biggest, Protestants are a second, but we're at like 1.3, 1.3 billion people nominally. Again, these are all these are all nominal numbers because you can't really know exactly who's who. And the Protestants are at like 700 million nominals, and then the Orthodox are about 220. So basically, it's a 2-party system, so to speak. And the other one's a third party, and so when they're coming,
libertarianism of religions.
Yeah, but are you calling it Orthodox libertarian? Is that the idea here?
I'm drawing a parallel that this is
the
a
libertarian party of Christianity.
And again, they're coming along criticizing the West for look at what you guys did with the Protestants, who were basically the ass mad Democrats who were trying to destroy all of order. Because it's like you can see the parallels here, and there's the Republicans who are who is like we're the Catholic the Catholic Church. Then we're having some internal power struggles between the forces of retardation and the and the forces of order. And again, like if you look at our who do I blame? I blame Jesus. Kind of, because remember he's like, oh, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Basically, and whatsoever I'm give to you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatsoever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. And he only gave Peter the keys. He gave all of the apostles the ability to bind and loose, but he only gave Peter the keys. And and what does Peter go and proceed to do? Denies he ever met Christ 3 times in one night. So it's like first Pope had he's like, never met the guy. Nope. And so of course when Jesus comes back and he's like, oh, I'm back from the dead, you can't keep me down. And so that whole death thing wasn't for me. And anyway, so afterwards, he goes back to Peter, who had denied ever knowing him at all, and 3 times in one night. And so what's he do as a kind of a soft rebuttal? He asks him 3 times, "Do you love me?" Because obviously it's like, if you love me, then you know me. And because again, not only is love founded in truth, it is also conveying of truth. So it's like it's kind of like logical that you have to know someone in order to love them. Duh. And that's kind of the bar for our first pope of hey, you must be at least this stupid to ascend this high, because otherwise it wouldn't give glory to God. Otherwise our continued existence would not give glory to God. We are the oldest corporation in human history, and by far the most successful. And that is not, and the Catholic Church for the most part has not been led by brains. It's like we've had some real brainiacs in charge of the papacy. Like we've had more than a few of them, but they've been a whole lot closer to Francis most of the time than Leo the Great.
Actually, not only that, I think Peter Kreeft tells a story of a Protestant comic writer in I think the 16th century who he wrote a series of short stories criticizing Catholicism. One of them was this was during the Borgia papacy, the most corrupt thing you can imagine. And a merchant is about to convert from I think a Jewish merchant is about to convert from Judaism to Catholicism, and he's an Italian merchant in Venice or something, and his local priest finds out he's gonna go to Rome to do a business deal with the Borgias. And he says, oh no, he's going to see the corruption, and he's going to stop his conversion, and he begs the guy to get baptized before he goes. And the guy says, business before pleasure, and he just goes. He returns sometime later, and he says, well, priest, you can baptize me now. And he says, wait, you went to the Borgias? You saw all the corruption? So why do you still want to be a Catholic? He says, well, look, I know how hard it is to run a corporation and make a profit, and no corporation that corrupt can last for 1,500 years. It has to be a miracle.
Absolutely. It's like, it must be the blessing of St. Peter. We're not this intelligent. And it's like, we've seen nations rise and fall like there's no tomorrow. And we've seen private companies rise and fall like there's no tomorrow. Catholic Church keeps going on, and it's not because of intelligence. And it's because we have this correct, our corporate structure is perfectly really perfectly well mimics love. Not perfectly, but really, really stinking well, and we're the only one to do it. So we basically end up with a monopoly that way, because we're the only religion that's necessarily productive, so. And so So yeah, so it's like you have, the Protestants and the Orthodox who always criticize, the Catholic Church, for how Western civilization has gone. It's like, we built the thing from the ground up. Anything at all that's good about it is because is like is us. And by the way, the only reason it failed was because we had really bad states and governments that were not following that same kind of corporate structure that works. That's really good at eschewing that's really good at eschewing entropy and creating order, producing order. The reason being is that that shareholder management customer structure, that's basically what you've created when you've created a corporation, is a way of decentralizing the love production process. Because you have the shareholders who have value, they want to exchange that for value through a medium of the management of the corporation with the customers, and vice versa. Customers want to, and so and you have a system where everyone has self-ownership, everyone has production, production of value, everyone has voluntary exchange of value. And this, this creates, and this mimics love, and that's through deferral of gratification, through peace and peace and self-control and self-sacrifice, because you're sacrificing your time and effort and labor for the betterment of the other two parties. Again, because it's not two parties, it's three. And there's, again, it's the customers, the management, and the shareholders that are the three parts of the corporation. They're the holy trinity of the corporation. And so the coordination is done through the price system. And so, this is a system for perfectly, not perfectly, but really, really well mimicking love. And so when you get like the obvious heresy that's going to come about because, what's going to end up happening is, because you have organizations in society that are not the state, that are very well able to create new value, which the state is not. And your monarchy, which it's a medieval monarchy, not a corporate monarchy. What's going to happen is that medieval monarchy has about 4 scalability problems. And that are absolutely critical. It cannot scale upward. That's one problem with monarchy, is that it cannot scale upward, and it needs to be able to, because otherwise what happens is you get power centers that are created outside of society. And now we're back to the Sumer problem, where the banksters overthrow the state. and this is what happened, where we had, we were doing great. Rome, the Roman Catholicism was amazing, and it was creating the all of Western civilization, everything that was good. And we had states that couldn't keep up, and that's chaos. And so what happens with chaos? Well, it demands power to be used against it in order to supply order. The left took advantage and basically gave us the frauding, which has given us the republics. Because republics, they didn't know about corporations back then. They'd only just been invented, like when the first corporations, not even the correct ones, but like just at all, were in like the 16th century. And the first publicly traded corporation, which is the actual correct version, wasn't invented until 1602. It was March of 1602. It was the Dutch East India Company. And uncoincidentally created by a Catholic king. So, because again, Roman Catholicism is productive. It is. And so we started creating these publicly traded corporations that for like I think it was like 50 something, or is like I know it was decades, that the Dutch East India Company was the only publicly traded corporation. That's why it got so dang huge. So now, but what's going to end up happening is that now you have mass production of wealth, you have production of power centers outside of society, you have states that cannot keep up with all of the production. And so what ends up happening was you get like the Rothschilds and stuff like that, who overthrow the states and fund they fund the Napoleons, they fund all of the bad guys, and who end up creating republics. Why? Again, because republics have the opposite kind of scalability problem, where they can scale up way too fast, like way faster than the rate of production. So you're going from from one problem to the opposite problem. But this time around, after the first, we had something new that came along, was the idea of a limited republic. where we're going to mix 2/3 monarchy with 1/3 republicanism. And so because of this, you ended up with a somewhat low time preference. Again, I'm talking about the U.S. Constitution here. This is the only reason that that the republic has the brand of republicanism that came about in Europe was the terrible kind that Rome had, where you had like 26 civil wars in the first like 230 years, whereas we got away with one. And so it was the blood-soaked monster kind, whereas we got the like slightly less blood-soaked monster kind. Where like our government has problems, real problems, with mass murder, and but not nearly to the like we didn't start 2 world wars. I'll put it that way. That it's like this was the other kind of republicanism, which is really blood soaked and really bloodthirsty. And so like this is what gets created, but now this new thing has come along, and so the corporations are not like killed in the cradle. Basically, now you have a system where the corporations can still grow and thrive in America, and then they can metastasize and spread out to the rest of the planet. So now what you have is a kind of a disconnect between what's the religion of the we have basically a system where the corporations got so big that they killed the states and turned them into republics that could scale a lot quicker with them. But now the republics have become kind of the hindrance to them, where now the corporations are able to scale far faster than particularly through technology. The corporations are able to scale up faster than the Republican state is. And so now the state's just a drag on it, and it needs a state after its own likeness. And so the corporations now are, like I said before, they are seeking to overthrow the Republican system, because now the Republican system is a drag on them, and they want a more corporate governance that can scale up with them, not ahead of them, not behind them, with them. And this is, and going to be much more symbiotic with them for that reason. So yeah, this is, so yeah, we did get the natural, chaos that archotropism economic theory predicted would happen. This liberalism that is going to help shield not shield. It's kind of how do I put this? It's a transition state. It's the necessary transition state between where we were and where we're going. And unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be a better way of doing it, because again, Charlemagne screwed the pooch. He should have, transformed his kingdom, of the Holy Roman Emperor into a corporation instead of breaking it apart. I blame Charlemagne for that one. And so now we have, because of this theory, we like, it's going to shit right now. It's going to get better. And when we finally do start getting actual corporate monarchies, in the monarchies, but actual corporate monarchies, which again mimic the Holy Trinity, we're going to start getting a real comeback for Catholicism. And by the way, we never started losing. I mean, we've been growing for we've grown for 20 straight centuries. So it's like that. We did. We've grown for 20 straight centuries. So it's never like we were like losing. And and we've always had these internal power struggles. And so, shocker. And I'd expect to have quite the same things, going forward with the corporate states, which we're going to get. And, those corporate states, again, you're supposed to have a monarchy that, you're supposed to have kind of a symphony, if you will, between your religion and state, because one is your, if you think, what is justice? Just, in terms of love, as, going back to Augustine, if love is your definition of order, sin is your definition of chaos. And so justice is restoring the chaos to order. So if chaos comes along and knocks order out of its way, and it's something's wrong with the order, justice is reordering it, putting it back to the way it should have been as best you can. So so from there, we're going to, your church is basically your definition of love, and your state is basically your definition of justice. The state is the justice organization, and you can think of this as think like back to 1 Samuel chapter 8, where what did the
Mhm.
children of Israel come when they're coming to Samuel to say, hey, this the whole liberalism anarchy thing just isn't working. Just how about you give unto us a king who will, one, fight our battles for us, and two, be our judge. One, fight our battles for us is you can't, create justice for us externally. You're not able to fight our battles for us. And two, you can't keep justice for us internally, and you can't be our judge. And so just give us a king. And by the way, even the shitty kings were better than most of the judges. It's like they had the problems, and liberalism doesn't work every time it's tried. And so we went through that liberalism stage. We had monarchy, or I should say the Jews had monarchy when they were under Pharaoh. It sucked. And they went through their liberalism stage, and God was showing them why it's not going to work. And that's he says, Paul says in the New Testament that the whole point of the old covenant was to show you why this whole law alone thing, this whole justice alone thing doesn't work. You need actual love to go along with it. And again, what are the two greatest commandments? One is love God, who is love. So love, and two, love your neighbor as yourself. Two most important ones. You think that would be a really good big point for your Protestants and your other guys, but it's not, and they kind of miss it. And so what ends up happening is that, we know how liberalism works out. It works out with monarchy because they need because the people want a justice system. Liberalism does not provide that. And so when you go through a liberalism phase, what do you end up with? Monarchy. Because that's what again, going back to how is it regimes steal legitimacy from prior regimes? That the guys in North Africa are, they really are like, I am a Roman, I am a Carthaginian, and the Muslim sultans say, well, we'll give you a tax cut. It's like, well, Allahu Akbar, hell yeah.
Yeah.
And again, could be why? Because that was a more just system. When you're getting a tax cut, that is automatically closer to justice because you're not, stealing a little bit from you is way better, is way more just than, stealing a lot from you, which is what the Republican Romans were. And so when you're Islam spreading across North Africa like wildfire, and the reason is because they're, actually giving more justice. They're providing more order than the Republicans were. And so now we're having the shitstorm of of like Protestantism, which again was kind of almost a necessary transition step, between the really crappy states that we used to have, republics, the really crappy, the far more crappy states of republics that we have, and the much better, much greater, much grander, much more godly corporate states that we're eventually going to have. And so and again, the way they do that is by just providing more justice. And unfortunately, and which is good news, because our World Economic Forum guys are going exactly the wrong direction, with that, with the ESG scores and the woke social justice. They completely screwed up the justice side. It's like, you had one job, buddy, one job. It's like you could have had world domination and you screwed it up because you went with the lefty bastard definition of order, and instead of instead of justice, instead of the actual system of justice, which is what you really should be providing. And so you probably left the door open for an Elon Musk or a Mises GOP.
Speaking of Mises GOP, there is a description in the description and the link to the donation page for Mises GOP. So if anybody listening likes what Andrew is saying, and you should, if you have a brain, go donate some money to Mises GOP so we can get this going.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like the enemies that have shot themselves in the foot, or the serpent is biting his own heel. Forget biting the heel of the seed of the woman. He's biting his own heel now, and all we have to do is step on him. And we have an organization, Mises GOP, that if you donate to it monthly, we're gonna win. We're taking Hoppa's. We're taking not just the anti-tax, which I kind of explained earlier, but we're also taking Hoppa's what must be done strategy, and we're creating private societies. And we're going along and saying, again, Hoppe figured this out in '97. Libertarians have been kind of sitting on their rear ends for the last 25 years since Hoppe figured out exactly what to do. And so we're just going to do it now. And since nobody else is doing it, we're basically the monopoly. So if you want order in your society, if you want justice in your society, if you want to have a lot more of a right-wing Catholic version of society, donate to Mises GOP at misesgop.org. What was the link again, Caleb?
It's in the description. Let me look at that real quick to make sure I get the right one. I want to make sure I plug this correctly here. It's at the very bottom, of course. www.misesgop.org/donate.
I think there was one more thing to it. There was one more term to it, but that is correct. But yeah, misesgop.org/donate. And oh no, I had made you a special link for your show, not for Austro-Thomism. But yeah, for just but just /donate at misesgop.org/donate. If you want to help engineer the society and take advantage of the serpent biting his own heel instead of our heel, it's like donate here, we'll make it happen.
And I just have an interesting, before we move on, sorry, Caleb, just have an interesting observation. Corporations being essentially a Catholic invention or born out of a Catholic tradition, in that, it's
actually a Catholic invention.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, the King of Holland. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's also, I think, metaphysically way before the actual invention, true for Catholics, because we take part through the Eucharist in the corporation. If you go back to the Latin root corporare, to unite into one body of Christ through the Eucharist. So it very much figures in our very metaphysics of how we comprehend the world. And
you see that in our magisterial structure too. That it's designed to mimic the characteristics of Catholic love without the profit motive. Because if you put that in there, is going to be a problem. It works really great for like the justice and the order providing, for the theory providing. Not so much. You can't have a for-profit religion. Doesn't work well because it's not about providing you with order. It's about it's not about providing you with what you want. It's about kind of demanding from you what you're supposed to do. And it's really about it's like they don't run on more responsibility and a more more self-denial. Those are not really sellable terms. It doesn't really work that way. But we still managed through maybe sheer luck, or maybe it was the blessing of St. Peter, to reverse engineer all of the characteristics of a corporation, namely like the separation of ownership and the heritability and all of that stuff. We reverse engineer, and the voluntary nature of it too, which is really important. We reverse engineered all of that and put all of those characteristics in one way or another into the College of Cardinals, into the magisterium, into the parish, and into the monasteries. And so, if you look at the Catholic Church as a whole, it has all of those corporate features of a corporation. They're just not in their normal place that we're used to.
That's a lot. Let's just give me a moment here to kind of think, because that was a lot.
Yeah. If you look at like the heritability, like I'll just like as you're still coming down, but if you look at like the how did we do the heritability mechanism, like in regular corporations through the shareholders, like you can pass your shares down to your kids, and that's the heritability mechanism. What we did was we said, okay, the Pope gets to pick all of his successors. Basically, it's like, so you basically have an ideological monarchy, where it's the monarchy of ideas. It really is. If you want to think about it, it's a marketplace of ideas. If you want to think of it that way, an actual one that actually works. And you'll get a few idiots in there every now and then who are going to like kind of pollute the pool with idiots. And but usually with because of the how do we get those idiots? Well, they have to come up through the church. And so it's like, okay, so the pool is already kind of slanted. If you're just like throwing a dart and randomly picking, a cardinal or something, like, okay, there's like a decent chance you're going to pick a decent one. They're not going to be too terrible. I know they're going to be corrupt, but it's not going to be that terrible. And and because this is a religious organization designed around love, that has all of these rigid rules about how this thing works, and it doesn't change. And this isn't really a democracy. And because so you're going to be picking from a better pool than just the general population, and you're going to have more education, more morality, because a lot more scrutiny, and you just have a better pool of people to choose from that you would not have in a normal Republican system. But because of that, and the guy at the top who's elected by the guys in the middle, the College of Cardinals, who are picked from the bishops, basically he's going to be picking guys who are for the most part after his own ideological self. And so you really only need more good guys than bad guys, and you're already picking from a better population in general. So this is a self-promoting organism that will naturally promote more order than it causes chaos. And it will cause chaos every now and then, but the key here is that it produces more order than chaos, and that leaves you with a net profit of order. And so, so this is how we've managed to stick around for 2,000 years, is this ideological monarchy. That's just one way that we reverse engineered those characteristics. And if you want to tell me that they did this out of brilliance, I'm going to tell you you're an idiot and you're historically illiterate. And I'm going to say this is probably that we did it almost by fluke, and this is what gave us this is what gave us all of the success. This is we're the oldest corporation in human history, and it works. We're by far the most successful for this reason.
Very early in the podcast, you mentioned how in Islam love is found in submission to Allah, kind of thing, like divine command, Syria Moors. One of the major innovations that came with Catholicism and Christianity was we didn't fall into that same category of divine command more. It was more God is good. You can discover good for reason. It's not just good is found in God. Good is out.
There is no love in sin, as Romans says.
Yes. Yeah. It's kind of sad to see some Protestants.
I'm sorry. There's no sin in love. I said the opposite. There's no sin in love. So love is perfect is omnibenevolent. That's where we get our omnibenevolence from. He's perfectly loving, so he's perfectly good.
It's kind of on the whole point about divine command to more. Like it was a great point you made earlier about love is not found. It's a mystic. That is it's closer we have for that as weight kind of saying. It's sad to see that I have one rule for the show. I won't bring on anybody who holds to divine command Syria Moors. I don't want to talk to people at all. That's like the one rule I have for my show. I'll talk to anybody, but not those kind of people. And I keep seeing more and more Protestants seem to fall into this category of divine command Syria Moors. Why do you
I'm not familiar with it. Tell me what I'm not familiar with the divine command theory of Moors.
So divine command Syria Moors is that more is a idea that now in Islam, it's good because Allah said it, not because it's good outside of Allah. It's just because Allah said it's good, therefore it is good. So Allah could say rape, murder, and pillage, but because He said it, therefore it is good. Yeah,
the unproductive nature of it, because their version of God is one that is not bound by reason, and it's not. And this is actually something you see in Eastern mysticism as well, is that they believe that that's why it's a mystery. We don't know, and it seems like a contradiction in terms, but really it's just a mystery. And you see Jay Dyer make this argument every time the Thomists argue him into a corner, is that it's a mystery. It's not a contradiction; it's a mystery, which is anyway. But that's something that's characteristic, again, due to that geographic proximity, but there's the real cross-pollination of ideas right there that Islam does not believe in a rational Allah. They believe that reason and logic are just whims of Allah, and He could make 2 + 2 = 5 if He really wanted to. And that's not what the Catholic version. We believe God is kind of internally bound. It's still not external binding, but it's an internal binding because He wants to be the greatest version of Himself. This is why we end up with a logical God who does not change, and He tells us, "I don't change." Because I'm the greatest. I'm never going to be less than myself.
It's like you said, if God is love and love is synonymous with order, God is, if He's perfectly love, He's going to be perfectly orderly. It's going to be if He's ordered to Himself, He's going to be consistent within Himself.
Exactly.
It's part of His very constitution of being. And another problem with the divine command theory, it seems to admit the possibility of the two truths doctrine, which Aquinas so readily fought against, which is essentially reason can say one thing, you shouldn't kill babies, but God could say kill babies, and that would be perfectly valid. Whereas Aquinas said, no. If there's one creator God, if there's one creator loving God, the God of Moses, Jacob, and Esau, then it can't be that way. Reason has to conform to God. It's part of the very constitution of reality. You can't have it both ways. This isn't a mystery. This is just wrong. It's incorrect. It's not a paradox which needs resolution.
Yeah, exactly. And So yeah, if you have a God, if your God is irrational by nature and he can just change the laws of nature at whim, why would you bother studying them? This is the argument that Tom Woods made in or not his argument. He was actually quoting somebody else, but why you never had scientific inquiry emerge in Islamic society is that if God can be irrational, why would you bother studying the laws of nature? They can just change whenever he wants them to. And same thing with with the Orthodox. If God is unknowable, why would you bother studying it? Now you have an unknowable reality, that's going to follow him. And so you would never want to have scientific inquiry or anything or mass production in any of those societies because they have a different definition of love, which is their different definition of God.
And I think you sort of end up falling into this kind of agnosticism a little bit because if the creative world doesn't reflect anything about God, it's not worth studying, and it's effectively worthless. It's separated from the creator.
It's deism before its time, really. It's like you believe in a creator, he doesn't intervene, and he's not really all that causal, and he just set it up one time and had no particular rhyme or reason to it. And that's basically the essence of agnosticism or deism. And it's that which are again are broken kinds of love. They're broken loves. They're not correct loves, and that means they're sin. It's only one kind of love, and it's the only one that's logical and works, and it's the Catholic definition.
Yeah.
So the next, Caleb, I don't know if you have anything else, but the next thing I kind of wanted to get into, if that's all right.
Go ahead.
Plenty
of time.
So something that I'm very interested in, I think you sort of touched on it a good bit, is you see, Catholicism sort of builds the West. And then, at least very much in the West right now, is in a you wouldn't say necessarily a decline, but there's a lack of what was proper to Catholicism, at least in the modern liberalism that we see.
There's a retrenchment along the state. Is how exactly I would say it.
I think that's an excellent description. I certainly noticed. I put a lot of flavor of that personally on a lot of the flaws of the Enlightenment. And sort of what grew out of that. I know we want to talk a little bit about Kant at some point and his relationship to the transcendental argument for God. Do you want to touch a little bit? I don't want to preface too much, but do you want to sort of jump into Kantian thought? And I think we might have some disagreement with Bulgakov. I think you and I are probably pretty aligned on our feelings about Kant, but sort of that shift in how we think about the world and empiricism and how it affects our understanding of love and God himself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if you're a fan of Ayn Rand, it's one of the few things she got right. It's like I'm not a fan of hers at all, but if you're a fan of hers, it's like okay, well, she got one thing right, which was that Kant was a real doofus. Kant, I should say, or Kant, and but yeah, he's basically Luther on steroids. If you understand like Luther, he was had serious scruples, and he believed that humanity was just beyond saving.
For the non-Catholics, the people who knew, can you define scrupulous? Because I only found out about it this week, so maybe you can define that.
Scrupulous means that you're like always having just utterly intense feelings of guilt. You feel like everything you do is wrong and you can do nothing right. And for him, he's like, how can I be this? Luther in his mind is almost like it really is a mental illness, to where he's like, I can he has just such low self-esteem, low sense of self-worth. And he's just like, how can I be so shitty and God still love me and want to save me? How can I know that I'm saved when I'm just this awful, horrible human being who's just like a passive monk who's not hurting anybody? It's like, have you seen the other guys? Have you seen the Monties? It's like, and you're an Augustinian monk too. Like, come on. And it's like, you're not that bad.
You're fine.
He really, this whole Protestant Reformation could just be solved with an adequate therapy session. Really, it's like, and we would have had a much different 500 years, the last 500 years. Anyway, so he was like, I can't know it. He like, how can I know? How can I just what he ended up with was, kind of his faith alone ideology, where he's like, I can be saved by faith. It's like merely by me believing, I can know that I am saved. And, there's some real obvious logical and scriptural inconsistencies there.
At one point, I get some out Luther and stuff when he says like 5 solas. It's 5 things alone. It's like words on alone. It's 5. Like I don't know, but I read 5 solas. I'm like, there's the 5 things that are not alone. It's like they all work together.
obviously.
It's alone. It's so unreasonable. Then you realize he said reason's the whore of the devil. You're like, oh, that kind of makes sense now. Like it's
Yeah, that was a famous quote of his that reason is the whore of the devil. That basically you're because you can't know anything. I mean, he was a bit basically he was a big follower of a guy named William of Ockham, who was like the founder of nominalism. And granted that was he wasn't the founder of naturalism, which kind of preceded him, and naturalism preceded nominalism, but it was kind of always there. It's been there since like the beginning of time, basically, and we didn't invent that, and it resurfaced its ugly head at exactly the wrong time. But anyway, nominalism basically said came in and said that there's no absolute truth, and that's a little bit of an oversimplification. And of course, the obvious retort is, or rebuttal, I should say, is, are you absolutely sure? And so but it was this idea that Luther had been kind of a fan of, and he incorporated this because he had such uncertainty, such chaos, because he can't know anything, and he's looking for a way that he can just know that he's saved. And it's where he comes to faith, and he just gets the wrong answer, and you get an entire ideology kind of based on that. If you look at like Descartes as well, what was the one thing you could know? I think, therefore I am. So it's like Luther realizes the only way he could know he was saved, the only things he can know to be true are the things inside himself. And that's why he makes the self basically his God, where if you simply believe you are saved, then you are saved. And he's obviously wrong. And then Kant as a pietist, which is like not like it's not quite as radical as Luther was. Lutheranism is a more moderate version of Luther himself. And particularly today, but I'm saying at the outset, Lutheranism was, today they're like nominating trannies and stuff to be, they're like they're basically the Methodists, but back when they started, they were pretty good, and they were a more moderate version of Luther. Pietism was a slightly stricter version of Lutheranism. Kant was a pietist. And so he basically, he took Luther's ideas, he took Luther's religion and formed it into his whole ideology. Right. Again, one of the, his, Kantian philosophy, his epistemology, his metaphysics, all of that is all based on this idea of nominalism. He made nominalism philosophically coherent. And and in doing so, he basically, was basically as Luther on steroids. So and you have this problem of you can't know anything because we have to experience all truth has to be filtered through the self. And therefore the self has to be the ultimate arbiter of truth, and which, works if you're a scripture alone kind of guy. It's like, and you don't believe in authority, so you must have to be your own authority. And and you can't, your senses are not able to be trustworthy. Therefore, you have to use logic a priori to prove everything, because your logic is obviously perfect. And so it's so much better. It's like your senses are shit, but logic is just great, man. It's like if you have a problem with one, how you don't have a problem with the other, and it's no good way. And so anyway, but what you end up with is this idea is a more philosophically consistent or version of Lutheranism is what Kant invents. And so what does that do to civilization? Destroys it, because now you've made the self the object of love rather than the beloved. You're supposed to have 3 parties, in a love relationship. One is the lover, the second is the beloved, and the third is the bond of love itself between them. And so now you've said the purpose of the beloved is for the lover, and the purpose of the lover is for the lover. And so that kind of breaks love. It works somewhat, because if both parties have that idea, you still do get some production, not nearly as much, and you get a whole lot of extra problems that come with it. But it's not a 100% unproductive or anti-productive system. So that's why the Protestantism ends up as the second party that's batshit crazy, and it's like they're the only other ones producing anything at all, and so they get to be the 700 million, the second party in Christianity, if you will, and and again, if you have a concept of love that where half of it is completely unproductive, like Christ's love for or I should say the Son's love for the Father doesn't produce anything, and only the Father's love is like super productive, which makes zero sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely irrational. This is not consistent at all with scripture. This is not consistent with logic. This is not consistent with empirical experience, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like you get to be the third party where that hasn't produced anything. But you can still criticize the people who did produce it. Hey, it's like, but that's how I see that. It's like, if you're going to be criticizing the Catholic Church for how the West has gone, you should, be cognizant of the fact you haven't produced anything yourself. So, and and the places where you're prevalent are having real serious demographic issues where they basically switched one production for the other. They switched, what little trivial economic production they had for basically no kids. And that's a terminal demography there. And so again, fast forwarding to Kant, his concept of love isn't entirely broken. It still has some productive qualities to it. It's just it's producing a whole lot of extra chaos with it, which is anti-productive. And because now you're having an emphasis on the self instead of an emphasis on the other. Like love is, again, supposed to be selfless, is self-sacrificing, self-sacrificial, self-controlling. The idea being that so I can do good to the other, I can produce excess, which is then given to my beloved, and but it can still work under his system. It's just a whole lot less likely, and because of the incorrect emphasis on the capital S self. And so, my opinion of Kant is this guy's a total moron. And, because, he believes he can only know things that are inside himself logically, because his senses suck, but his logic is so perfect, and that basically throws empiricism out the window, the empirical method, which is fundamental to science, out the window. It's not good enough to just have a good, logically consistent theory. You actually have to check it against reality. And which is a part that a lot of people, don't really like doing, so like you've come up with a great theory of economics that explains everything and tells you exactly what to do. And then the world doesn't look anything like that, or at least, like a third of it really looks exactly the opposite. You think you would, question that theory. Like, is it wrong or is it incomplete? I'm talking about Austrian economics now.
I was actually going to ask you about that.
This is where I came in with Archotropism. Is that it's not that it's wrong, it's just incomplete. And this is what again, and you would know this because you looked outside and you talked to another human being who wasn't a libertarian for once in your life, and you realize, oh, everybody else is not a libertarian. We're like 1% of the population. And there's these massive monopolies on aggression and violence that fit nowhere inside of my economic theory. And perhaps I should try to understand that. And along comes Andrew with Archotropism to explain exactly why these things work the way they do, why they mutate, why they don't all look the same, and why and how exactly they change over time, and why. And now you have a complete view, but you only got there because you noticed that but because you live in reality and you're looking around. Which is a very social cue, which is something you get by being Catholic, because we're a very social organization. We're not antisocial. It's not about the individual. It's about the collective, about the group, about the church.
Yeah.
And just guys, I think I have to jump out. It's past midnight where I am, because I'm in Brazil, so I might need to go. But this was very, very fun. It was great talking to all of you. And if you guys continue, I hope it's a very fruitful discussion. May God bless you all.
Definitely.
See you, man.
Nice meeting you.
Right.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you about this real quick. I only have 3 more questions really, but those 3 questions could probably go because a long time.
Yeah.
You want me to ask you?
Ask them all.
Okay. Equality is a poor man's unity. Something you tweeted out a while ago. Would you like to go more deeper into that? Explain that a little bit.
Yeah, because if you understand what equality means, we're not the same. Yeah, it's like we kind of talk about the the Holy Trinity as if they're co-equal. That's not an actual description of God. It's more like a manner of speaking, to where we say that there is no one that is more powerful than the other, but we're not saying that they're the same person. That we're not modalism, yeah, and so it's a but by they're not. It's not that they're equals; that they're like co-equal, but really what it is they're unified, because unity is the product of love, and equality is its bastardization. So if you and the difference being is when you're unified, it means you're a you still retain your own individuality and your characteristics, but you're united through love. Yeah, because love is of one mindset, is of one will, and of the same intellect, basically. And so you're united in your will, and you're united in will and mind and heart and mind. But you are still yourself. You are still distinct. Like the Son is not the Father is not the Holy Spirit, et cetera, et cetera. And so when I say equality, is a poor man's unity, unity is the real thing that love has, and equality is the bastardization that Satan's trying to play with, and he's trying to this is his the equality is sin, because it's a lie. None of us are the same.
Yeah.
So if I can riff off of that and something you mentioned earlier a little bit, because I think there's a good parallel there. When we were talking about Kant, you also mentioned Descartes, and this idea that we sort of fall back, or in the Kantian framework or the Cartesian framework, we fall back on logic as sort of the one thing that we have. And certainly from Descartes, it's a mathematical kind of logic that we focus on. And I think that's where a lot of this idea of equality comes from, is we don't have this sort of idea of equal in the eyes of God or equal in our humanity sort of goes away, and they're just equal. There's quantity. We are the same. We are equal, and we lose ourselves and become numeric. And that's why equality, in this sort of in this more numeric, mathematical sense, replaces any kind of true unity or love, because we don't have that sense of that anymore. We have A is A. We have the logical system, and we no longer we've lost the actual empirical reality that logical system is trying to refer to.
You can't trust your senses. So how do you even know other people are real? It's like, again, love has to be based on truth. So if you again, part of that is also has to be based on trust. So if you don't even know, you can't even trust your own senses, you can't trust yourself, how are you supposed to trust other people? Broken love. And, and this, and you don't even know that they exist because it's just an utterly stupid idea. And it's like, and if you can't trust your senses, why can you trust your reason? It's like, it just this irrational skepticism just breaks everything, and irreparably breaks it. So this with this equality, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's the wrong idea. It's modalism. I mean, it's the idea. I mean, equality is the idea of modalism, basically. And if you wonder why does love require 3 persons when God, again, it's not enough to just presuppose the existence of God. You must presuppose that He is love as well. And love has particular characteristic. Again, requires 3 persons. Why? Because it's selfless, but directed towards another self, which again, and it's reciprocated, so it produces the other. So it produces 3 necessarily. It must be 3 persons to be love. Because again, you must have a lover, a beloved, and the love itself, and I should say the bond of love itself. And so if you don't have all 3, it's not love. It's definitionally wrong. So and again, that love has to be based on truth. So obviously Kant is wrong.
I love how during this conversation we've gone from explaining why fideism, faith alone and understands things, has its problems, why radical skepticism also has its problems, and really kind of says no, the only real way to go forward is faith and reason. You have to have both. I get upset when I talk to Protestants, say, no, you guys I get upset like the Protestants, say, you guys apply too much reason to things. And Orthodox say, no, you guys apply too much reason to things like the Protestants. And I'm like, stop comparing us to them. Like, stop. I get Orthodox people open some also start to revoke. They say Aquinas and Lucifer are to blame for everything. I'm like, those guys aren't even compatible at all. Like, how do you say those two
No.
go side to side? They're just retarded. It's like who was it? A guy on Twitter.
Well,
I think it was Adam. I think it was Adam. He said Aquinas led to Lucifer. Lucifer led to Descartes. I'm like, I think you forget. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
no,
you think
William of Ockham led to
Yeah.
Luther. It's
Yeah.
like, and what's worse is that you're saying but if you're going to be putting it all on the Catholic Church, which is supposedly schismatic, you would be really incumbent on you to say, why is it that this, why is it that this schismatic organization built everything that's good about Western society and the other guys didn't? It's like, your guy, I really think that needs an explanation, and they don't have one. And it's like, so it's like, all right, you never built anything, shut up.
I think that's why you see this big sort of revisionism around the Enlightenment and this idea that everything before that was the Dark Ages. Is that you sort of have to blame the Catholics for everything that came before, and somehow this magical
Dark Ages are a myth.
Of
Like,
course.
they didn't happen. As very clear. If you've read anything about history of the Middle Ages, it's so clear that it was not the only reason that we call it a Dark Ages. Like, the only example of this is that you had a lack of literacy. You had literacy was what fell, and the reason was obviously that we had an ice age at that exact time. And it got much, much more difficult to grow food. So yeah, obviously people can't be reading books when they have to be growing food, to survive winter. And we can see this in the paleo climate data, where it shows like a 1 or 2 degree drop in temperature, which, okay, if you don't know anything about agriculture, that's really, really, really bad. Like, really bad, spectacularly bad. Like, you can grow way less food with a 1 or 2 degree drop. And not to mention it was actually darker because you had, at some points, because you had volcanic eruptions that put out aerosols that physically made the sky darker back then. So, it wasn't we don't control the climate, so man-made climate change. I don't know if they're presuming that. I assume they're not, but if I were not to be charitable at them, I'd say they were presuming climate change, man-made climate change, but we don't control that. Man does not have that kind of power. And
go ahead.
So like the Dark Ages were a myth, and there was production all the way through, from in the West through the Catholic monasteries, starting with the monasteries and the rule of Benedict, which was like 6th century, I think. And basically from there on out, we had massive, mass production of everything good about Western civilization that naturally compound. Interest and value, they compound over time, and so it's like that we had unpaid producers producing basically bottomless amounts of compounding interest, for over 1,000 years. And what did that give us? It gave us, everything good about our civilization. We didn't take it from anybody. We made it. And and so it's like this is our definition of love that creates everything good. So it didn't create there's no perfect organization. Again, the Catholic Church has had problems. Just because your organization is designed to mimic love doesn't mean it's actually going to do it all of the time. It just means that you're going to be better than not, and all you need is better than not most of the time, and you win, and you end up with that excess. So you can't, and you carry that forward over 1,000 years, and you get everything good about Western civilization just in time for the Protestants to start fucking it up.
Yeah. Whew. Okay. Next question. Austrian seems to have how I put this. Austrian econ, it seems to be a lot of people think Austrian economics is born out of a Kantian epistemology. I noticed some debate when people say it's born out of Kantian. Some say it used to reason as a priori, like a neo-Aristotelian kind of thing. If it is born out of Kant, why is it true? Like, why is the parts of Austrian economics that work and is good effective? Why is it? How is it work as basis is off of Kantian nonsense?
Well, the idea behind Kantianism is that truth is effectively always subjective, because it's subject to your own personal experiences, and you experience truth, through yourself. And so, but the reason why that, that's obvious. The actual truth is effectively unknowable because you can't experience all of reality. And even if you do experience some of reality, because what reality you do experience, because your senses are not quite, always, they're not perfectly reliable. Some of your experience is going to be wrong, and your reason might also not be perfect. So your interpretation of it might be imperfect. And so so basically for Kant, all truth is effectively unknowable, or at least it has it has very trouble, you have trouble reliably knowing truth, a lot of it, and at every level. So but and for that, so basically what you get from there is that truth is subjective. Now the reason that what's different about economics is that it's based on the idea of subjective marginal value, which actually, as turns out, goes back to a bunch of like Spanish monks. That it doesn't go back to Kant. It goes back to a bunch of the Spanish school of economics, where there was basically a bunch of Catholic monks in a monastery in Spain. It goes back to them. They're the ones who like first figured out like, oh, the actual most moral market price is the actual market price, and we should not have the labor theory of value is not moral, because you might say that someone might not want to pay that for that. Basically they had been a whole bunch of economists prior to them had been saying that it's the labor theory of value, where you have the cost of production plus like 10%, is what is all you're allowed to charge. That's the most moral price. And whereas the other guy said, well, what if someone's willing to pay more for it? It's like, are you saying it's wrong for someone to, if a businessman has two customers who wants to buy his widget, one of them wants to pay him more, and the other one only wants to pay him a 10% profit margin, you're telling me it's wrong for him to sell it to the guy who wants to pay him more? And they're right there, they're saying value is subjective actually. Yeah. So, what the problem is, what's actually true? It's not true that all truth is subjective. What is true is the foundation of Austrian economics, is that value itself is actually subjective. It's truly subjective. And so so whereas all of the rest of Kantianism just makes civilization fall apart, Austrian economics actually makes civilization work, or I should say, what's left of civilization work.
Yeah. Uncast, you got anything you want to add to that?
I think it's interesting because I definitely see both, especially in somebody like Mises, who's living very much in a Kantian world and trying to emulate the science that grew out of Descartes. And so I think a lot of his prose and a lot of the sort of the way he understands his own theory ends up being very Kantian. But the foundational ideas that are in it, like you said, have older origins and have an origin that's very much in the real. And I think it's what he does a lot better than obviously someone like Keynes, is that he's looking at, okay, well, how do people actually interact? Like, let's try and discover the actual empirical principles of how people interact with each other and how they exchange goods. So even though he's sort of in a very, I think, honestly, very Kantian mindset, he goes about trying to develop his theory in a way that's very much based on things he actually does know directly, and this sort of universal truth that is accessible to us.
Mm-hmm. And so it's like, and I also liken it back. I don't know if you guys know about the what's called the right and left hand of God. Basically where God is on his throne and there's angels to his right and angels to his left, and the right wing angels are the angels of order, and the left wing angels are basically the demons and Satan and all them. And what it says is that basically the right and left hands of God both serve him. So it's a weird thing of, okay, well, how do the demons, serve God, when they're trying to fight against him? Well, what it means is that, they're even when they screw stuff up, because again, that's archotropism, where, the demons cause this chaos, which God applies power to and creates order. It's like, that's the, basically all they're doing is creating fodder for more love. And so even when they don't want to serve him, the game is rigged against them. So they still serve God. They're trying to fight him. They're trying to screw everything up. And in doing so, they just make things better for God. The game is completely rigged against them. And this is, I think Kant, or I should say Mises here, is one such example of, you had an idea that was wrong basically everywhere else it was tried, but it still helps further civilization because one aspect of it was correct, that value is actually subjective, and so now you have an Austrian economics which really does serve to further the interest of God and glorify him. So tough luck, Satan.
Okay, I want to thing I have left now, and that's is Zaydio and the transcendental argument for God, which we've kind of touched on here and there, but that's kind of, if we can, kind of get a little bit more into this. Anyone want to, I know Eincast, you said you wanted to sum it up a little bit on Twitter, I think. Was anyone want to sum up what the... I've tried to sum it up. I don't understand it enough to sum it up, because all I hear is this big words and then circular reasoning. So that's pretty much all it is. But does anyone actually know a good representation of the transcendental argument?
Basically the idea is that I can kind of sum it up, is that these ideas that truth and morality and all of that, even the discussion of them logically presumes a Christian God, and that's just not really true. It's like you can this was, if you read Aristotle, like he has again a fully consistent view of the universe, which was basically an infinite universe. So he said that you didn't need to solve the infinite regression problem because the universe is infinite. So, and for him that was empirically observable. For us, that's empirically false. We know that the universe actually did have a beginning point, and scientists think it was somewhere around like 13.8 billion years ago or something like that. I don't know what the exact number is, but it's like we know it definitely had a beginning. So the idea that the universe is infinite doesn't work, and that was the solution to the infinite regress problem was, well, the universe is infinite, and it's created, but the universe is infinite, so we don't need we don't actually need a first cause. And it's only when you get to the Middle Ages with Thomas Aquinas, when he's reading Aristotle and pointing out all the flaws, he's not like reading Aristotle and saying, oh, what a great guy that he is. It's more along the lines of reading Aristotle and saying, there's a problem here, there's a problem there, and and where Thomas Aquinas is reading him, he's like, well, no, it's the universe is not infinite, it definitely had a beginning. And because he's read Genesis, and he knows that this is we had a beginning. There was a time, the time had a beginning. And so so where this idea that you can just logic your way back to God, or that because God because God is the first cause, well, assumes that that there's a first cause. So even then you're kind of like empiricism actually has to be prior to your logic, to your God. In effect, before you're presupposing God, you have to presuppose empiricism, and you're assuming that basically you're saying that creation exists, therefore there must be a creator. Well, okay, that's the problem, because now you said we have to presuppose the creator to prove creation, but basically you're presupposing that it's created, and you don't have a reason just a priori for knowing that. You would have to assume it. Yeah, I mean, you could, like, if you were just like, if we hadn't gone through the space age, we wouldn't know that yes, empirically we definitely had a creation point. And we wouldn't know that that Aristotle's idea of physics definitely didn't make sense if we weren't checking. Basically, again, he had a very logically consistent view of how actual physics works, which descended from just the laws of causation themselves, and he was completely wrong. That's not how physics works, because we can check. And so you can't just use logic to go all the way backwards. What you really need to do is take revelation that tells you that God is love, and then presume that God is love, and then build your way out from there. And then you get a real reality. But unfortunately, the people who generally espouse the transcendental argument, namely Protestants, have a wrong view of love. And other people as well, like you've mentioned, Jerry Dyer, he has a very wrong view of love. And again, all heresies start from not understanding love. If you understand love, you're not going to be a heretic. If you don't understand it, which again is like the vast majority of the population, you might still behave it, but that doesn't mean you understand it. You're just going off of instinct, basically, and going off of instinct and incentives. So I mean, that's the problem with the with the transcendental argument is that one, it actually you're presuming empiricism before God, which is the sort of thing you're trying to seek to disprove, basically. I'm sorry, not disprove, but but this is where you get it is necessarily a viciously circular argument, because that you can have virtuously circular arguments. I'm not sure. Supposedly, it's like I don't know too much. This is where he said, Jay will argue that there's a difference between circular reasoning that's vicious and non-vicious, because the non-vicious could be virtuous, and and I'm like, no. It's like I'm not totally convinced about it, but even if I allow it, his is still like his version of the transcendental argument is still the viciously circular type. Because again, it has to it proves the wrong God, which is not the correct one, and two, it does not explain the universe very well. It does not explain logic very well. You have a broken causality, in your ontology of God. So that, and if God is love, then and then he'll argue that stuff about the essence energies distinction, which is just completely against everything that the early council said. Like the first, basically the idea is that of that was okay, that when God says that I am a personal God, tripersonal, or I am love, he's not speaking about his essence, he's speaking about his energies, which are separate, real separation from the from that. And he's talking energies, plural, which is a really big problem, because basically I think it started at Nicaea, and basically your third, fourth, fifth, and sixth ecumenical councils all affirmed that there was one divine energy, not multiple, certainly not infinite, as the Paleothonists like to say. Is one. They say Christ had one divine nature. He had a human nature as well, but that's irrelevant to the argument we're making about divinity. So he had two natures and two energies, and so anyway, so he when J. Dyer is saying that my concept of what I've logic got out to be must be presumed for reality to make sense. Actually, reality doesn't make sense when you presume that one. So duh. And if I could, and if I can, prove any kind of God, well, why don't I just presume a law? Why don't I presume that logic is actually infinite, and there is an infinite regression, and that's not a problem because the universe is infinite? Why don't I just presume an infinite universe, and like Aristotle did, and prove it wrong that way? And that's the problem with presumption, is that you have to check it. Okay, you don't know that until you've apprehended that this is actually reality. You have to actually apprehend these causal chains, and empirically. You can't know things without being personal with them. This is why when it uses the in Greek, when 1 John chapter 4, when it's saying, hey, God, he who loves is born of God and knows God, the actual word for Greek in there is like gnosis, or it's the masculine version of gnosis. Gnosis is a feminine verb. The masculine verb, masculine equivalent, is the one that's used. That means to know the supernatural. So you actually know it. You can actually apprehend the causation of the supernatural, how it works through love. And so it's so it straight up says that because God is love, and the actual verb for is right there is a statement about his essence, a statement about his being. It's not about his energy. At least that's not what it says. Certainly not in Greek. And the Mount Athos guys really ought to know that, but they're kind of in denial over politics.
Okay, we covered a lot of
the transcendental argument fails for multiple reasons. It's just dumb.
It's not a good. Yeah,
it is viciously circular, and it's also wrong.
Yeah, my take on anyone who does a lot of the presuppositional guys, they seem to state what they're trying to prove is this from the outset, and then when you want to argue against it, they browbeat you over the head of being too stupid to get what they're saying.
Yeah,
that seems to be the go-to method of arguing, which is, I mean, whatever. I guess.
Shuans. Yes, it seems to be his favorite word. But this is a dumb argument, and this is also not the one that built human civilization. This is the one that definitely did not build human civilization, because we said that God is knowable. He's not like there are mysterious elements to it, not perfectly. Certainly can't comprehend everything. There's a difference between knowing and comprehension. Comprehension means you've got the full thing 100%. whereas knowing might be like, 90%, 95%. And, and like, I would definitely recognize it, that's that sort of thing, whereas, they say you have to, anyway, but because we believe God can be known, we believe that, he is orderly and rational and all these other things that flow. And therefore it behooves us to try to study his creation, which is going to reflect its creator and the creator's elements. And so, that's the whole reason why, because we believe that God can be known through love. It's the whole reason why that, it's not just, not just his, energies or, it's himself, his essence. The essence of God can be known through God, and also, also in the Holy Eucharist, because, if you believe in transubstantiation, that this is the resurrected body of Christ that is being transubstantiated, or metausiasis, as the Easterners would say. Basically it's the same exact word, same exact meaning, but and also the same exact thing, that hey, its substance literally becomes the body and blood of the resurrected body of Christ. Well, if it's the resurrected body of Christ, doesn't that have to include his person? It's like that, it's like, how is it a resurrected body of Christ if the person of Christ is not in it? And by the way, that person of Christ has two natures, that is, one is divine and the other is human. So if I'm literally consuming the divine substance, isn't that knowing? That doesn't count? Really? It's like, of course not. And so, and that, that's just a logical disconnect they have, is where I say it leads to, if you have an incorrect a concept of what God is and how he works, all heresies come from there. And basically this is why I say all heresies stem from a misunderstanding of what love is.
So if I'm hearing is anyone listening, if you want to understand God, understand better, you need to understand divine simplicity, and you understand what God is love, what love is in a Catholic sense.
No, what you really need to do is presuppose that God is love, because you actually will get the correct answer then. But you would have to know that through revelation. You can never reason your way to knowing that, like, God is love, or knowing all these things about love. That comes to us through revelation. So it's like we were never going to figure it out by ourselves. He just had to straight up tell us the answer, and he told us a really, really long time ago, but we weren't listening really all that well. I blame the Jews.
Well, that's it. We're more than 8 minutes in. That's going to get us taken down. Well, I am exhausted. Cat, have anything you want to add before we wrap this up?
No, I think this is. I've really appreciate you coming on, Andrew. It's been a lot of fun talking to you, and yeah, we'll have to do it again sometime.
There was one question in the comments about sedevacantism.
I didn't write that one down. Yeah. What's your take on that stuff? Because I can't even pronounce it, but I know a little bit about it. I know a little bit.
It's a bit of a tongue twister, or it's a mouthful, and I've been going back and forth on it. Just trying to understand the arguments for and against for the past probably 4 or 5 weeks, and the thing I'm coming to is that, okay, you have what you end up with is, okay, if you say, well, okay, which of these popes are qualify under like the terms that the sedevacantist thing. A sedevacantism means that they think the seat of Peter, the Pope, is not the Pope; he's an anti-pope, and therefore the seat of Peter is vacant. And so that's what that word sedevacantism means, that the seat of Peter, the papacy is basically vacant spiritually, because if the Pope teaches heresy, then he's no longer the Pope. He's automatically excommunicated ipso facto right there on the spot. And you don't have to wait for a council or any bishops or anybody to accuse him of being heresy. He's just automatically a heretic. And so that's there, and they have some decent arguments stemming from past popes and other saints who have kind of said about that much. And it seems to be there's a little more context to it, though I'm still trying to apprehend the causality there. But the problem you really run into is that, okay, well, if you say, okay, well, who qualifies under these definitions and these terms? Well, what you get is that, basically since, Pope John the 23rd in like the 1950s, there has not been a legitimate Pope, and so because of that, all of the bishops that they've nominated in the meantime are necessarily illegitimate. And so you're coming up on basically the end of a human lifetime, 50. I mean, you're talking almost a good 70 years. So basically, all of the bishops are dead. All of the good bishops who've been nominated, who are alive now, are not legitimate, and we have completely broken apostolic succession, and we have people who are just de facto automatic heretics. Are all the ones teaching and leading the church. And I would say, that seems to be a contradiction of, Matthew 16:18, which we mentioned earlier, that you are Peter, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. And, basically again, gates of hell is a very, very particular, it's a very particular idea that because it's a defensive implement, not an offensive. Gates only defend, they don't attack. So the idea is that hell is like this fortress, and Christian's job, or I should say the right's job is to sack the fortress and take the castle, and the gates are not going to hold us back. But if you've got people who are leading the Christian army who are all generals, and if your generals are all imbeciles, you're not going to win. Okay, so the gates of hell definitely will work, because they're not so it's like you necessarily need good leadership to take down the gates of hell, which again is what we're saying. He says it's not going to work against them, and you need good generals for it, and you need people. At the head of your Christian army needs to be a good pope, and needs to be good bishops. And if you don't have any who are good, because all of them are necessarily illegitimate, I would say that's a contradiction of Holy Scripture. That cannot be correct. That's my gut feel for right now. I'm still not done understanding all of the arguments for and against yet, so I don't want to put my imprimatur on that explanation, but that's my gut feeling right now, is that okay, well, you basically you're going to end up with a succession crisis, and I don't think that's okay. And you also have tons of other problems with it. Well, how do you know anything's true anymore? And this is like one of the arguments I was having with a Sedevacantist the other day. He basically started saying to me, because I can read the plain language of the Holy Scriptures, I can read the plain language of the church fathers, and know for myself that that this interpretation is what's true. And so I'm like, oh, it sounds a whole lot like Lutheranism. And he started yelling at me right then over the phone. I'm just like, okay, I just won that argument right there. And he proved to me that he really doesn't have a better argument for this. So at that point, you better raise your argument, not your voice. And if you raise your voice at me, it's like, okay, I just won, and I'm going to hang up the phone on you. So that was that's my, I'm still trying to understand the space, but my gut feeling is that Sedevacantism is definitely incorrect, because you would have a succession crisis, two, an authority crisis that would lead you necessarily to Martin Luther. You're basically saying Martin Luther was right. And it's like, no, I don't think so.
Biblical Anarchy just commented, my sola scriptura is better than your sola scriptura.
Exactly. My biblical interpretation, my personal interpretations of the Holy Scriptures, the ones I choose, are better than yours. And it's like, okay, you're a Protestant. Like you're not a Catholic, you're a Protestant. Instead of a Contist, you kind of necessarily go for Protestantism, and which, thank you, Daniel. That's a
we're gonna get you, Jacob. You're gonna be Catholic soon.
I certainly think so. He's thinking in all the right ways.
I look forward to Daniel Tree saying from Daniel Tree Biblical Anarchy to Daniel Tree Papacy Anarchy or something like that.
For those that are interested, I think we're having Biblical Anarchy on, I think the week after he does Tower Gang. So look forward to that one.
That'd be great.
That's going to be funny.
Well, I want to say I want to add, I got nothing else to add. Andrew, if there's nothing else you want to add, go ahead and give your plugs, and we'll hop out of here.
Yeah, if you want to find me, I'm going to be doing a lot more shows. I'm going to have a live reading series on a really, really good book by an SSP, a Society of St. Pius X guy. There's a really, really good book. I'm going to be doing a series on that this week on my channel, Popular Liberty. You can find me also my Twitter handles right there on the screen. And you can always join my join the conversation in my supporting listeners group at subscribestar.com/popular-liberty. And I've recently cut the price down to $7 because I understand how for everybody, for all benefits, because I understand that the economy just went to shit and it's about to get really, really bad. And on that note, I'm going to be doing a presentation sometime this week on exactly how screwed we are. I mean that literally. Unfortunately, it's a little bit of a black. It's going to be a black pill episode. We are fucked.
I might have to skip that one.
Yeah, it's like if you want to know how, I'm also going to be going into how exactly what I'm doing to mitigate the damage and make myself a whole lot less fucked. That's also going to be in there as well. So that's going to be something of a white pill. It's like human civilization about to go to hell in a handbasket, but you don't necessarily have to go with it all the way. So
sounds good to me.
There is damage control. And we, again, if you want to, save human civilization, misesgop.org/donate. $1 a month, any monthly amount makes a big difference.
Wonderful. Eincath, go ahead and give your plugs real quick.
Sure. It's Twitter at Eincath and AnarchoCatholic.substack.com. Andrew, again, really appreciate you coming on. It's been a lot of fun, and hope we get to do it again at some point.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Okay, everybody, that's another episode of Austro-Thomism Roundtable. Please go to the website. We got some great articles up there. Our link is in the description. We still have some more stuff coming out soon, and we got a lot of great roundtable stuff in the works. So make sure you subscribe. Anyways, have a good night.
Take care.
Sure. Should I put on?
You guys mind if we take like a 5-minute break?
Let's take a quick break because it's been an hour. Or take a quick break, and we'll come back to this.
Okay.
Let me just. Anyone listening, we're gonna have a part 2 on Simsano. So just stay tuned.
Thank you.